Alright, so we got the new SBS from volume 109 of One Piece, and this is one of the best SBSs we've ever gotten because it's finally being revealed who Luffy's mother is. Let me just say, allegedly, not fully confirmed. Also, it's showing us who the secret warlord was that Ace defeated in the past. We're also finding out who the next user of a supreme grade blade is, and a few other really interesting things as well. So let me just quickly explain what the SBS is for anyone who's unaware. So it stands for Shitsuman Obushu Suru, which means I'm taking questions. It's essentially like the Q&A portion of the volumes that are released for One Piece, where Oda uses this as a chance to answer some questions about the series or whatever that maybe he just didn't have the chance to answer in the actual manga or anime itself. So let's start with the Luffy's mom stuff. So Oda was asked, Granny Neon said that the Empress from 2 generations ago died from falling madly in love, but the Empress from 2 generations ago was Shaku Yaku, aka Shaki. Why did Granny Neon lie about this? And Oda said, well, this is a matter of reading comprehension. It's not a lie. What she's referring to in this line, the Empress from 2 generations, also was talking about the love sickness that she also got. In fact, in the past, the empresses and warriors of this country have always died from this sickness without knowing the true reason. But in recent years, Granny Neon and the others seem to have avoided death by going overseas. So then we see the lineage here, and we see that Gloriosa, aka, Granny Neon, was like the Empress of Amazon Lilith from 3 generations ago. Then 2 generations ago was Shaki. Then we see this new character who we've never seen before, who was the Empress before Hancock, and her name was Toritoma, who died from the love sickness. So this individual right here is apparently Luffy's mom. And if you're wondering, like, well, why? Where's the evidence? Well, there's not like full evidence yet, and obviously Oda isn't saying it here, but the popular opinion amongst the hardcore community, I suppose, is that this is definitely Luffy's mother. Like, even before we saw her, we just assumed that it was her due to the contextual clues left by Oda. So in my opinion, at least, I think the main piece of evidence is Kuma sending Luffy to Amazon Lily, after he slapped him away from Sabaody. Because it's like, why would he send him to Amazon Lily of all places? It's probably because he wants him to be with his family or the other half of his family. And speaking of that, I think that theory gets even more solidified in this very SBS, because Oda was also asked, the only places where Kuma's paw ability can fly you to are limited to only places that Kuma has personally visited. And Oda says, yes, that's right, because in the past, Kuma traveled around the world, meaning that every single place that he sent the Straw Hats to, he's been before. Because we saw in the flashback earlier on in the Egghead Island arc, when Kuma is going around looking for possible cures for Ginny's sapphire scale, he does wind up at like Mihawk's Island or whatever, I'm pretty sure. But as far as I know, we never see him go to Amazon Lily. But considering that he sent Luffy there, that means that he definitely went there at some point in the past. And the story, or at least allegedly what we think, is that he and Dragon, who were boys, Revolutionary Army, went to Amazon Lily at some point, and the Empress there at the time, who is Toritoma, fell in love with him, and then they got together and made Luffy. And then she eventually died of love sickness, I guess because Dragon left or whatever, maybe. But I think that seems to be what actually happened here. And I think Hancock falling in love with Luffy is probably supposed to parallel to that, So yeah, there you go. This is what Luffy's mom probably looked like. Anyway, on to the next one. So he was also asked in chapter 1100, the warlord that Ace beat, which was being talked about by Kuma and Saturn, what was that person like? And Oda said, he looks like this. His name is Hanafuda, and his hobby is collecting ancient Zoan devil fruits. On what he's scheming behind this remains unknown up until now. His height is 514 centimeters, which is almost 17 feet. And his other name is King of Lizards. So yeah, we found out from 1100, as it says here, that there was a warlord who was a part of them before the Standard 7 that we saw, when we got into the series. And it was this guy, Hanafuda, and he was defeated by Ace. He looks pretty cool. He actually probably has one of the best character designs of all of the characters, maybe. He was probably not a good guy because, you know, all the warlords kind of were portrayed as heels in the beginning, but he's got like a scythe type thing. Actually, you know what? His weapon is like Guillaume's from Demon Slayer. It's like a bladed sickle thing, although Guillaume has like an axe, but it also has like a chain with like a mace, a spiked mace attached to the other end. This is pretty cool. I wish we could have seen this, you know, but I understand that we couldn't because time or whatever. But it's interesting that Oda points out that he's collecting ancient Zoan devil fruits, but then like it remains unknown why he was. So I guess we'll never know, or maybe he was working with somebody else. Not really sure, but I still think it's pretty cool that Oda showed us this at least. So next up, he was asked, what is the name and rank of Fujitora's sword? And Oda said it's called the Yakuza Kasen, or Yakuza firing line. It's a Shikomizu sword stick or cane sword, and it's one of the supreme grade blades. It's a named blade made by Fugetsu Kisaburo from Wano country. That blew my mind. I did not expect freaking Fujitora to have a supreme grade blade. And to be honest, I don't think he necessarily deserves to have this. Don't get me wrong, I think Fujitora is cool, you know, I'm somewhat of a fan of him, but the only other supreme grade blades that we've seen so far have been Mihawk's sword, Whitebeard's like staff blade thing, Roger's sword, and Venus Juro's blade, the Shodai Kitetsu. So that means that he's now joining that legendary group, which is like the Pirate King, a Yonko, a freaking Gorosei, and then Mihawk. It just doesn't seem like he's quite there, you know? I mean, he is an admiral, he's pretty powerful, but like to be on their level, at least blade-wise, I don't know. But we are coming towards the end of the series, so I guess Oda has to start, you know, letting us know what these other supreme grade blades are, since there's, what, 7 more of them that we have to find out about at this point? Oda was also asked about Shiki, and that now that he has finally appeared in the main story, so does this mean that the events of the movie Strong World has been officially incorporated into the timeline of the main story? And Oda said, well, you can forcefully incorporate the whole movie, but if you do that, it won't be that much connected to the main story. However, regarding Strong World, what I think it is that the Shiki that existed originally in the main story is the same person used in the movie. Yes, he's in the main story from the start. However, if it wasn't shown in the movie, Shiki was not supposed to have eaten the float fruit. I have a self-rule that I won't make a guy that can freely fly and float in the air, so I decided to steal the float fruit because this is a manga about pirates, but since it was used in the movie, I have to use it now in the original work. LOL, so it's true that it's strange, a reverse importation has occurred. So yeah, Shiki is definitely canon for sure, but he wasn't supposed to be the float fruit user, which is understandable. It is a pretty broken fruit. But I guess the studio and the writers that were making this Strong World movie just went over Oda's head, and apparently that's not uncommon. So I guess if Shiki comes back into the story, he's gonna have to have the fruit, but I guess Oda will nerf it in some way. Oda also finally answered why CP9 was promoted to CP0. He says, okay, because of the translation, the Japanese got weird, so I just put this message as is. Firstly, let's talk about the CP9 who were defeated at Eni's lobby. The CP9 members appeared in the cover story series CP9's Independent Report, in which they were blamed by their chief Spandam with the sin of mission failure, in which they decided to vanish someplace else. That's how their training to get more stronger has started. On the other hand, for some reason, due to the authority of Spandam's father, he got promoted as chief of CP0. From there, Lucci and the others uncovered the invasion crime plot that the underworld big shots and former level 6 prisoners are scheming with Spandine and crushed these organizations to prevent it. After that incident, Lucci and the others were reinstated as agents of CP0. Spandine is on his sick bed, lost all his authority, and Spandam became Lucci's underling. So that's it. That's finally explained why CP9 became CP0, because before that it was like they didn't really do anything other than just fail, but now we know. All right, so I got my boy Sai with me, and today we're gonna be taking a look at the silhouetted swordsman at the end of chapter 1121, because he's like the big talk of the town lately, because, you know, he's new, mysterious, and exciting. And there's already like a popular theory as to who he is. And to cut it short, he's probably Shanks' brother or related to him in some way. But mostly this guy is like the, I don't know, implied to be top holy knight. He's not like the leader, because the leader was said to be Garling, who we actually see in this panel of characters as well. So why is this guy that guy? Well, because he looks like he has the same sword as the silhouetted guy that we saw when we were originally introduced to the Holy Knights. And to connect him to Shanks, well, Shanks was said by Oda to be born on God Valley, and inside of that treasure chest that Roger had found. And it was also said, I think in like the guide to Film Red's movie or something, the Gorosei basically said that like Yuta, like you can't touch her because she's part of the Figureland family, which she like literally wasn't a part of, although her becoming Shanks's like adopted daughter kind of made her a Figureland, which implied that Shanks is a Figureland. And that was actually the first time that we heard that name. And it was like later on that we saw that Figureland Garling was like the leader of the Holy Knights, so we're like, oh, he's probably Shanks' dad. And Garling probably had like 2 sons. One of them wound up being Shanks, and the other one wound up becoming this silhouetted guy. Now, as for what he could look like or what he could be based off of, I think Sai is going to be able to help us with that.
Yes, hello. Thank you for having me, Zhoniin. And this silhouette, man, he is fascinating, right? Not only is this quote-unquote the first time we've seen him this closely before, but he's showing up in the same panel with all of the goats, right? Akainu, Dragon, Emu, Garling, Shanks, Luffy. Like, he's going to be an important character. And if I had to guess who this is, I do agree. It would be someone a part of the Figureland family. And I do think, personally, that we've seen a prototype of this character already. And that would be in the form of Lark, which I know sounds like a crazy name out of nowhere, you know, just a guy named Lark, right? But back during Wano, Oda did a One Piece X Kyoto special event where he drew a couple of pictures and color spreads for them. And in those color spreads, he told a mini story. And in that story, we were introduced to 2 brand new characters, one of them being Lark, who, if you look at him here, he really just looks like a blonde-haired Shanks, or a mixture of characters even. And I feel like this was a prototype to who this silhouette is, not only because of the facial similarities to Shanks, but in this story, this guy actually has the ability to turn into a yokai. He was a Nue, which is pretty fascinating when you think about it, because that's exactly what the Gorosei have been shown to do here on Egghead Island. And this guy was introduced well before the Gorosei. And then not to mention, he has a girl on his side who looks like a black-haired Hiyori. And we met her, you know, before we met the actual Hiyori. So seeing this guy coming back and, you know, using this guy as a prototype even, I think would work really well. And yeah, I would like to pass the mic back to you, Zona. What do you think about this?
So I didn't know about this guy before we did this video, and when you told me about him, I was like, wow, that's pretty cool because it makes sense. First of all, he looks like what this silhouette could look like or wind up looking like. I don't know if he's going to have blonde hair. Maybe he has red hair, because I don't know. It's not even confirmed that Garling has red hair yet, as far as I know, but just the fact that this other character that he's like next to here does look like Hiyori, and that eventually became Hiyori essentially. So the same thing, like you said, could be happening with Lark. These are just like prototypes essentially to canonical characters. And on top of that, you said he didn't really have a devil fruit. He didn't eat a devil fruit. He just can become this yokai thing, right?
Oh, yeah.
So that also could be paralleling to a future story element of the Gorosei having the same ability. It's not confirmed yet. It's kind of just a theory that the Gorosei actually didn't eat devil fruits, and the yokais that they transform into is kind of like something else entirely. It's like either that is them, or they can just transform into that through other means other than eating a devil fruit. So that would be interesting too, if this was all like foreshadowed subtly in this like art exhibit that not even I was really aware of.
Yeah, just in the background, Oda was like, hey, let me just drop these characters out of nowhere. Like, if you bring this image up, a majority of people won't even know who this is, right? Like that's just how it is. Like Oda really hid this guy away.
No, like no, you don't know who he is, but it just looks so official because I mean it is. It was drawn and colored by Oda, and like the design is spot on. It's just like, is this like a multiverse character? Like, but I guess technically it kind of is. But I wouldn't be surprised if this is what he looks like, or because he does look like Shanks and close enough to be Shanks' brother without just being a facsimile of him.
Yeah, and to back up the notion that this guy could be like a prototype for a Garland, he's also a prince in his story too. So he is royalty.
Oh yeah.
Which would fit with him potentially being a celestial dragon or a prototype of a celestial dragon.
That is true.
Which I always want to make that distinction because they're not gonna bring Lark 1-to-1 into the story. That's not possible. This isn't canon. That's why I keep on saying prototype, because I feel like if we were to get Lark, Oda would probably give him a slightly different name. He would mess up the hair color or face a little bit to make it fit and make it feel like a brand new person. Kind of like what he did to the Hiyori clone on the side. But yeah, I think this is a really fun idea to play with. And plus, he also has if you look at Lark behind him, he also has a bow and arrow too, right? So it's like, hey, like maybe this is another weapon he could use, because we do know that Emu has this weird like blackened silhouette arrow he uses too. So maybe it's all connected.
That would make him fresh too. Like if he's a swordsman and he can use the bow and arrow too, and like because I don't know, we don't really see that too often. Like multi skills.
Yeah, not a lot of marksmen in One Piece.
No.
Usopp doesn't have a lot of a challenge in his field when you really think about it.
So for the last option we're going to look at here for who this silhouetted swordsman could be, it's going to be neither Lark nor even Shanks' sibling at all. It's possible that this is a character coming from the Ace novel by the name of Isuka. Now, first just looking at her, you could kind of put it together because her sword looks similar. The nose and mouth and chin kind of, although the silhouette is way more masculine. But the thing that really makes her interesting, other than just the physical comparisons, and it's that going into her lore, it says that when she was a little girl, her village was burned down by a fire caused by Marine Lieutenant Commander Draw during a pirate attack, and her parents were killed. But she was saved by Draw, and she received a burn scar on her hand during the attack. So, does that mean that she is the quote-unquote person marked by flames? Because I know they've been saying man marked by flames, right? They made it pretty specific that it was a man. Yeah.
But
so I feel
the thing with Japanese is like you can never really tell. Like I mean, at least from an English perspective, like it could always be like an all-encompassing term. Like maybe the man marked by flames could mean man or woman, or just person marked by flames. Like it's hard to determine that nuance.
Yeah. So is it possible? Sure. It just seems unlikely that Oda would just randomly bring in, I guess this character is canon. Definitely more canon than Lark is. But I just don't think that she would be brought into this at this point, especially to become such not only one significant character, but two significant characters at the same time. Also in the hunt for the One Piece, like in the final, bracket of players here, it's just asking too much. It just makes more sense that it would be the top holy knight. It doesn't even have to be Shanks' brother. It's just that for sure this silhouetted swordsman is the top holy knight guy.
Yeah, like I think that's the main problem with it being Isuka, is simply because like how would she compare to some of these characters, right? Like she's in the same namesake as Akainu, Dragon, and Emu. Like, Isuka, the random marine, showing up here and being a threat towards finding the One Piece. Like, I can't really see that. I mean, I guess you could say the same for Kobe, but we know he's potential man, right? He's going to be an admiral one day. Like, every character here is of high caliber. Isuka, I don't believe she is. And it's not me, like, trying to demean her or anything, but it's as plain as day because she's not an admiral, right? Like, you can't just bring in some random, like, marine, like, oh, here's Captain Isuka coming in. It's like, wait, why? Like, if you're not an admiral in this final saga, you're just going to get done dirty. So bringing in Isuka into this final panel is just setting her up for failure. That's why I do believe this is going to be a holy knight more than anything. And plus, like, it's a faction we are, we're privy to a little bit, right? Like, we know they exist. We know we're going to meet, like, at least 9 of these guys. So, like, at some point, we're going to have to get them silhouetted. And I feel like this is a holy night. Isuka being in here would be crazy. That's all I got to say. But it would fit the women representation because this would be the only, the only girl here, which, I support.
Yeah, I didn't even realize that. Oh, well, Emu could be
I didn't realize that either.
role.
Oh, yeah, Emu too, yeah. But Emu, dude, did you see Emu's eyebrows? You can kind of see, like, a silhouette of Emu's eyebrows in that final page. And, it gives off like Patrick Star vibes.
Yeah.
You see it? You see it?
Yeah, I'm actually looking at it right now. Yeah, that's hilarious.
It's so funny. Yeah, hopefully it's not a girl with those eyebrows. All I gotta say.
All right, so in the latest chapter of One Piece, we finally have seen a silhouette of Joy Boy, and something that I didn't notice on the first view, I think because I was rushing through it to be honest, is that Joy Boy is freaking huge. Like, if you compare his silhouette, size compared to Emmet in the flashback, he is actually really big. So, I was recently watching this great channel by the name of Dawn and Dusk. Maybe the best One Piece channel at the moment, possibly. I don't know, debatable, of course, but go check them out because they sized up this silhouette of Joy Boy to Emmet. And apparently it is the equivalent of like 6 Luffys in comparison to like, the size of Luffy on top of Emmet. It ultimately winds up scaling Joy Boy to about 969 centimeters, while Luffy is 174 centimeters. And what's interesting is that Kuma is 689 centimeters, and that goes into something we've been talking about for a while now, and it's that Joy Boy was possibly a buccaneer, and now it seems more likely. Also, I got my boy Sai with me, so what do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, Dawn and Dusk, they did their homework, they whipped out the ruler, and they started measuring Joy Boy's height. But the thing with this is that scaling in One Piece, and especially sizes, I think they're pretty inconsistent personally. I don't mind the idea. Joy Boy might be a buccaneer still, but when I look at this size comparison, that we get in 1122, the most recent Luffy size comparison I go to is 1120, where we see Luffy in Sun Nika mode, and he's standing side by side, not standing, he's like floating in the air, but he's floating beside Emmet. And if you put those two panels together, Luffy's actually the same size as Joy Boy is in this chapter. So I could see where they're coming from by using the comparison where Luffy was in the scrapyard, but there's also other comparisons that kind of like blow that one out of the water. And I think it just goes back to size being kind of hard to tell in One Piece.
Yeah, now that you pointed out, Luffy is huge in 1120, or I don't know, Emmet isn't.
Sizing is silly, man.
Sizing is silly. It is. And now I was wondering that too when I was first seeing the video. Like, I was like, is this Oda just, I don't know, not even really taking that in consideration, or is he like purposely depicting Joy Boy to look this large in comparison to Emmet? Because, going further, there was another little scaling comparison that Dawn and Dusk did with Emu. So you could see how big Emu is kind of compared to the sword that they are near in the flower room. So if you scale that to Emu in front of the giant straw hat, that iconic panel, which we see Joy Boy wearing a hat, which is probably finally confirming that is his hat. But using rough scaling here, Emu compared to the hat, so it's going to be like 7 emus to get to 700 centimeters, meaning that it's possible that this hat could fit somebody who's the size of Joy Boy.
Yeah, someone like if Joy Boy truly is like a larger sized buccaneer character, then yeah, this straw hat would fit. Another idea I've kind of been playing with this straw hat is that maybe this, if Emu is like a regular sized person, and if this straw hat is just absurdly large, a theory I've been playing with is that this could be not Joy Boy's hat, but Sun Nika's hat. And in the last chapter of One Piece, we kind of saw how powerful rope and knots can be. And I was kind of wondering, like, why is this straw hat, in this freezer? Like, why is it not just in a perfectly temperatured room? Why is it frozen? And I was like, well, if it's the sun god's hat, maybe it just emits like a certain type of heat. Maybe it constantly releases Haki. Oh, the only way to stop the sun god's power is to freeze it. Of course, that could also be Joy Boy's hat, but you'd have to like kind of explain why it's in the freezer too, which it's kind of funny, right? Like when I open my freezer, man, I see like a bell pepper and some meat. I don't see a straw hat. So there's got to be some deep meaning behind that.
Yeah, so it's interesting that you bring that up because what you said is one possibility for sure. Dawn and Dusk thinks that the straw hat is in the freezer because it possibly is holding part of or all of Joy Boy's soul, which is like, wait, what? I know. So this goes into Joy Boy, possibly being a Buccaneer. And when Vegapunk was talking about Kuma and like the Buccaneers, he said the Buccaneer tribe's special trait isn't their physical strength. They want, and then, he never finished that sentence. But given that he was like reacting to Kuma's robotic body, which was basically had no part of him left, his human aspect, I guess, or any part of his quote-unquote consciousness, but he was still able to react and like protect Bonnie from Saturn and like console her and everything. So I guess it was kind of implying that like maybe the Buccaneers can implant or impart or I don't know, manipulate their soul in some extent and put it on inanimate objects or something. So that goes into also you talking about the knot untying in here. We saw Joy Boy imbued what he said to be the greatest Haki into like this knot for Emmett to use in the future. And when he untied it, he like blasted Gorosei away. It's like pretty much the strongest thing we've ever seen in the series, right? More or less. So
oh, for sure.
Yeah, so maybe instead of that just being like a super high level of Haki, maybe it could be like the inherent ability of the Buccaneers.
Yeah, and here's two things too, right? Like I was kind of dismissive of the Joy Boy size comparison, but I'm very open to it. If I'm proven wrong later, that's totally fine. So going back on my point earlier about that straw hat, if that straw hat is actually Joy Boy's and they did impart their soul into it, I love that. Because there's a way you could explain why the room is so chilly, and that could be chalked up to what Brooks said, right? The underworld is cold. He calls his sword and his abilities the chill of the underworld. Nasujuro, who's like this skeletal demon horse, uses ice attacks. So it's like, wait, like if this is, Joy Boy's soul, like well after he's died, maybe that's where the chill is coming from. Maybe it's coming from his cold soul. And then, going on to the Haki portion, I do think that the Buccaneers are able to impart Haki into inanimate objects. And, when it comes down to Vegapunk and his thought process saying, oh, like Kuma, he could do this? That means the Buccaneers, their ability is to, when he gets cut off there, it could be the whole soul imbuement that we were talking about, or it could be solely the Haki imbuement too. Because that's something that we saw Kuma do, right? Like he ran up on Egghead, and it was crazy that he's even still functioning, but he also released Haki when he attacked Saturn. So maybe that is what Vegapunk was referring to. Maybe he still doesn't know why Kuma's here, but when he saw that Haki, explode out of his fist, he's like, oh wait, like the Buccaneers could do this. So we don't even have to full send the soul theory. It could even just be half of it, and I think it would fit in really well.
Yeah, I agree completely. It seems like at least, like you said, something from this has to come from like the Buccaneers' innate ability. Unless, it is some kind of super high level application of Haki. But I would like it more so if it was like a Buccaneer thing. Because then, I don't know, I guess it leads to other little things happening later on in the series that involve Buccaneers like imbuing themselves on things that, I don't know, they'll interact with them later on. Like maybe even at Elbath, there's like something that Joy Boy left there and then I don't know, take your pick for what it does.
Going back to Buccaneers and how that's like a special tribe in One Piece, it's funny that that's what they call them, because in real life, Buccaneers, we know them by like an entirely different definition, right? Like Buccaneers actually existed in the world, but they weren't like a special tribe per se. They were just like a certain type of pirates. So it kind of makes me wonder if we will get more races and tribes like that, where it just spins on real world words. So going back to like the very start of One Piece, before it was known as One Piece and Oda was doing little spin-offs, he had two different pirate groups or factions called Morganeers and Peacemanes. And those were just offshoots of what pirates are. So I'm kind of curious to see if those will make a comeback in the Void Century, or if that might even be what Joy Boy is, right? Maybe he's not a Buccaneer, maybe he's a Morganeer, or maybe he's a Peacemane, which I know sounds really silly, but that's what Oda called them back in the day. Like, Luffy didn't want to be a pirate in the original one-shot. He wanted to be a Peacemane.
Ah. Well, I mean, I guess that's kind of what he became anyway.
Yeah, pretty much, right? He's just over here spreading kindness and good fortune, even though he doesn't see it. Yeah, Luffy always says he's not a hero, but he does the most heroic things known to mankind.
Yeah, come on, bro. You know,
the worst thing he does is eat a little bit too much food from your country, but, you know, like, he also saves you from an evil dictator, so, you know, take your pick.
Yeah, small price to pay.
Yeah. I'll pay the tax, man. You can have my bell peppers.
So yet again, we're going to be talking about Imu's possible true form. Got my boy Sai with me. We've made quite a few videos about Imu already.
Yeah, just at least 2 or 3.
Yeah, I'm gonna make like a whole just compilation video of the Imu stuff that we've done so far. But in this video, it's different, promise, because we're once again reacting to a Dawn and Dusk video. Check out Dawn and Dusk if you haven't already. Great channel, deep cut Japanese One Piece stuff. But the long and the short of it is that Imu's true form, whether it is devil fruit or some kind of other thing that Imu and the Gorosei are doing with possible yokais or demon forms or whatever, is like a dragon or like a demonic type of dragon, and more so resembles like the type of dragon that we saw in Punk Hazard, which, aside from the other stuff that we've talked about throughout, you know, the last year or so, I've always kind of thought that, because the main thing, I guess, for me is just the way that Imu's transformation looks in that chapter when Sabo is in the throne room and launches that fire at Imu and like Imu eats it. I always thought that silhouetted mouth looked like the mouth of the big like red orange dragon from Punk Hazard. And Dawn and Dusk has like those two panels side by side, and it just makes me think that even more at this point. I know that you, Sai, are not really 100% on board with Imu being a dragon, but...
Oh, no, whoa, I'm 100%. I like this.
Oh, you're back on? All right, cool.
No, yeah. I mean, hey, it depends on what side of the bed I wake up on, but I go between Imu being akin to Luffy and then Imu being an actual Western dragon, which is what we're referring to here, because I like both theories a lot.
Yeah, because also, and we'll get into this, but it's just the word dragon. It's thrown around so much in this series that
Celestial dragon.
It has to end with Imu being something like that, or at least the controlling party being a dragon of some sort. But there's usually like multiple depictions of dragons too, which is interesting in One Piece. We've got, like we've been talking about, the Western one with the wings, and then there's the Eastern one, the serpent type that doesn't have wings.
Yeah, and what's kind of cool about this distinction too is that the Celestial Dragons have shown an affinity towards the dragons, the Western dragons that we saw at Punk Hazard. Because if you go to the data books, the Vivre Cards, we actually learn that the red dragon that we saw at Punk Hazard is named number 13. And there's 2 different versions of this. In the manga, Brownbeard says that the Celestial Dragons loved that dragon so much, they took a liking to it, that they gave it that name. But they're not too sure like why or how. But if you go to the Vivre Card, there's like another piece of information that kind of like fights against this, which is kind of weird, right? Manga versus Vivre Card. But the Vivre Card says that Dr. Vegapunk named the dragon number 13. So it's a weird toss-up with this, but either way, the Celestial Dragons do like Western dragons a lot. And going to some One Piece anime filler, and this is early filler, so, you know, Oda was definitely involved back in the day, like in 2005. But one of the first filler arcs we had in One Piece had to do with the Straw Hats encountering what is called a Millennium Dragon, which is a Western dragon that has like this immense power. And you know Oda loves his dragons at this point, right? Like Western versus Eastern. I'm excited to see what Oda's cooking up here. And I think there is a reason why the Celestial Dragons are named dragons at the end of the day. I think Imu could be what we're talking about here.
Yeah, well, I mean, also because, you know, they are called the Celestial Dragons. So, you know, it makes sense to name, like, your faction
at least
after
one of them.
what you are.
Yeah, there's got to be at least one dragon in the group, right? They can't all be like yokai.
I mean, there is one dragon in the group of the good guys, Luffy's father. Let's get into him, because there's also seems to be like two dragons kind of going on in this series at points. Like in Wano, we had Kaido, and then there was Momonosuke, the good and the bad, or just two. You needed one to, I don't know, maybe go against the other. Punk Hazard, there was also two dragons. So it's possible that what's going on here in the big, broader spectrum of things is that Imu is the one big dragon, and then we have the other dragon, trying to stop that dragon, who is Dragon, Monkey D. Dragon. Still not sure why he has that name. I always assumed it was like a
crazy, huh?
Yeah, I always assumed he named himself that, but I guess he didn't. I guess Garp named him that.
Yeah, but and then the names are spelled out in the katakana, so it's kind of interesting. It's like, so he's named Dragon, but in the verse, do they see him and think of a dragon, or is it just like, oh, that's a name, right?
Yeah, it's funny that you bring that up.
Word.
Dawn and Dusk also brings that up too, how you said the dragon's name is always written in katakana. For anyone who's a little confused by that, in Japanese, there's like multiple forms of their writing, of course. And then whenever you see like those big looking characters that mean like a lot of things, that's like kanji. And in One Piece, they do use the kanji to represent dragons like Ryu. But then with dragon, his is just written out like dragon. It's not spelled like Ryu, which is interesting.
We have had like one instance in the series where they kind of broke the fourth wall and they actually gave us like a definition based off of another language, and that was with the Nox Pirates with Pedro, where he was like, yeah, Nox means the dawn before the dusk, or I'm kind of paraphrasing there, but it's like, okay, yeah, like Nox is an actual real world word that's not Japanese that they brought into the series and gave an explanation to. So I kind of wonder if that's going to happen for Dragon eventually. Like maybe Garp comes out, he's like, yeah, I named him Dragon because I was thinking of actual dragons. Like we're not too sure how that's going to work out, but it feels very intentional that we have Garp, Dragon, and then Monkey as first names.
Oh, yeah. Interesting. Another thing about Dragon is his ship, the Wind Grandma. I guess that sounds cooler in Japanese.
Yeah, it sounds way better in Japanese. In English, we're just thinking about like a windy grandma, grandma's getting blown away.
It's like a black dragon. I mean, it's kind of serpenty throughout the boat, but like the head of it, the stern or whatever you call it, is like a cool looking dragon. Something I wouldn't be surprised if that's what Imu ultimately looks like. Another thing is that the flag, apparently it's changed over the years. Originally it was like a sword, and then it changed into that sword going into a dragon's head. And it just looks interesting. It looks monstery. If you flip it upside down, it could represent a crown with the sword going through it. I don't know, but what I'm getting at is that this could be hinting at Imu's true form, and that maybe Dragon even knows that Imu has a true form, and he's known this whole time. I mean, he's pretty silent when Ivankov is talking about that stuff with Sabo. But
yeah, he didn't say much, huh? They were like, hey, by the way, Imu Narona existed in the past, and then Dragon's just hitting us with a ... He doesn't really speak much about it. He did seem pretty shocked that they existed, but like, what more does he know, right? We don't know anything about Dragon's time spent in the Navy. Like, we don't even know his relationship to Akainu or any of the other admirals. He's just, hey, he worked with the Navy for a little bit, he quit, he became a revolutionary, and that's about it. Like, he is a character who is quite literally still shrouded in mystery, even 1,000 chapters deep.
Yeah, which is hilarious. Him and Mihawk. Mihawk also could have some kind of potential connection to Imu. We won't get too much into that, but just remember, guys, Mihawk might have a connection there.
Mihawk. And one thing I want to point out too, one small thing I want to add in, is that maybe the Giants also know a little bit about Imu. So one line that the Giants dropped a long time ago, back at the very end of Little Garden, when they were defeating the giant goldfish, they used their attack, the Hakuoku Sovereignty, and they said that this attack, the only thing it can't pierce is the blood-soaked serpent, which it's a phrase that still lingers with the community to this very day. And a lot of people believe that they were talking about the red line and how they can't break the red line. and that will eventually be one of Luffy's goals. But also, another way to spin this is that maybe, since serpents and dragons are viewed in the same light, maybe they were talking about Imu, or somebody from the world government.
Yeah, it could be a double entendre as well, since, you know, it's kind of implied that Imu constructed the red line to be the way that it is.
Yeah.
It could be both. It's like, you know, breaking the red line and the person who made it. That would be, I would have put it past Oda. He does that stuff.
Yeah, there's something with dragons, man. And then you go back to like Zoro's one-shot, not Zoro's one-shot, the Ryuma one-shot, where the main villain was a Western dragon as well. In a Western town too, which is kind of funny.
Yeah, glad you brought that up. I forgot about that. What is that? Like, what is the Western dragon in the One Piece world? Because apparently it's like a thing that exists, but it doesn't anymore.
Yeah, I mean, based on the backstory we got in the One Piece filler, which, you know, I'm kind of using that as a headcanon right now, but in the One Piece filler, they said that the Millennium Dragons just died off and they went extinct hundreds of years ago. And they even have their own island that is hidden from the world. So maybe that's the same case here. Maybe there actually existed dragons in the past and they all just died out.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that has to be the case because they were a thing for sure, which is
yeah, and
interesting.
it's not the most insane thing to think about as well, since the ancient kingdom apparently had technology so advanced it puts Vegapunk to shame. So if we go back like 900 years, you know, if Western dragons were just flying around willy-nilly, I think that'd be fine. Like it wouldn't suspend the imagination too much.
Oh, that would be a cool visual to see. Yeah.
Dragons versus robots.
That is
exactly like what we saw at the beginning of Egghead Island.
Ah, there you go. I guess there's one more thing that we could talk about. I'll try to go through this as easily as I can. So in the Dawn and Dusk video, they ultimately connect Imu to being the embodiment of the North Star. Now, I'm skipping over a lot of stuff here. It also includes how the Gorosei are all connected to this through a pentagram and a star, which we've also talked about before. But long story short, back in the day, during the Egyptian times, the North Star was in a different location than it is now because of the way the world's axis tilts and over time and whatnot. But it was a part of the Draco constellation, which apparently Dawn and Dusk thinks Imu is based off of, or at least Oda based a part of Imu off of that. And if you look at like an illustration of what the Draco constellation looks like, it's like a serpent dragon, but its tongue is like an arrow. And that's really interesting because we saw that before with Imu back in that sequence when Sabo was firing the fire and Cobra wound up getting stabbed with that thing. Now, we still don't know what it is. I thought that it was one of the other Gorosei at the time, like using their tail to kill Cobra, but now it seems like this might belong to Imu, like more so than anything. And it's not even Imu's tail, it might be Imu's tongue. What do you think about that?
I don't mind that at all. I think the tongue works, the tail works too if he's a dragon. And yeah, I mean, dragons are sharp-tongued. I mean, bringing it back, people do look at dragons and serpents pretty similarly. So, you know, people say that serpents usually have really sharp tongues. So I think that could work.
So that's pretty much it for this one, guys. Imu, very likely to be some kind of demonic dragon, Western-looking dragon to some extent. Other than that, the powers could be, like we've been talking about for a very long time, water manipulation, possibly. All right, so today we're talking about Shanks again. Got my boy Sai with me. Who else better to discuss Shanks with? Because I've got something that I don't think I've ever seen someone else mention, possibly. And this came to me organically, believe it or not, when I was looking at this very image of baby Shanks being found by Roger. And the pajamas that Shanks are wearing has sun, stars, and the moon on it. And I think that this was very deliberate because Oda is deliberate with his iconography and things like this, especially with the sun and the moon, because we know that, you know, the sun and the moon is not 100% always meaning good and evil in this series, but most of the time it pretty much does. And
yeah,
I, you know, like,
especially with Luffy being the sun god.
Exactly, sun god, and then we have the moon, which is celestial, you know, the celestial dragons. But I think that this means Shanks is half celestial dragon and half D. What do you think about that?
Yeah, it was kind of crazy when you hit me with this because I wasn't too sure like where you got this notion from. But when you showed me the pajamas, I became a believer. But I saw this and I was taken aback a little bit because I was like, oh, you're right. Like, that seems very deliberate, right? Like, putting suns and moons on Shanks's pajamas. The thing is, too, like, we do have to keep in mind that being a member of the D clan doesn't necessarily mean that they were born into the D clan and that they have a mother or father that has a D. They can always inherit it from somebody else as well. You can even look at this right here, this image, and you could take it as a sign that he is a celestial dragon. He could be a full-bred one. But since Roger adopted him, and since Roger has the D, Shanks could have carried on that will, thus making him a celestial dragon, but also a member of the D clan. It's night and day. Kind of like how when Sabo kind of reflected on the D initial, Ace and Luffy actually gave him the D, right? They're like, hey, let's just squeeze it in between Sabo's name. You know, he saw D-Bo. So I think the same thing could have been done for Shanks. And that when we move on in the series, maybe he'll meet the Garlands again, his family. And then he's like, you know what? I'm not a Garland, I'm a D. I feel like that could be set up in the future.
I'm glad you brought that up because I should mention for anyone who's unaware or confused why we think Shanks is a celestial dragon. It's very popular in the hardcore community. Maybe you're not a hardcore listening to this, but the picture that we are looking at of baby Shanks is when he's found here at God Valley. He was found in a treasure chest by Goldie Roger. So at God Valley, there was like celestial dragon game hunting stuff going on, and there was prizes. And one of the prizes is Shanks. Now, we don't know if he was deliberately supposed to be a prize or if he was put in there after the fact and it was kind of like a mix-up or something. But due to this, we think that Shanks is probably the son of the leader of the Holy Knights by the name of Figureland Garling. So that means that Shanks would be a Figureland. Now, it also seems like Shanks was given away purposely, possibly, or why was he put in the container? I mean, in this chest. And I don't know if that is the case. He was ultimately never really cared that Roger took him. But if Shanks is half D, half celestial dragon, that could be why he was put in this chest and given away, possibly. It's possible that Shanks was a bastard. Like, born out of wedlock, I guess, right? That's what that is. Like,
good way to put it.
Like, if you're watching Game of Thrones, you remember Jon Snow. That's what he was. He was born outside of Ned Stark's wedlock with another person. So it's possible that that's what Garling did here. Like, maybe he, I don't know, one of the slaves, or just, I don't know, maybe somebody else, a cool D initial lady, and then they made Shanks, and they were like, oh crap, he's a bastard, and he's like, I gotta get rid of this thing, this halfling. And also maybe that's why Roger is so receptive to him. Obviously Roger doesn't know, but it just could be, like that subconscious type of thing. And why Shanks ultimately gets the straw hat as well, because only like the most important people in history were able to get the straw hat, at least as we've seen. We don't really know who had it before Roger, but so far we know that it was like Joy Boy had the hat, then Roger, then he gave it to Shanks, then Shanks gave it to Luffy. So it would make sense that only a D would be in that lineage as well.
Yeah, no, I could totally see that. And another thing with Shanks, too, is that I do agree he could be a bastard. We have seen an instance of this before with Bonnie in this latest arc, right? Bonnie was exactly that. So I wouldn't be too shocked if Shanks falls in the same vein. And one thing that's kind of interesting about Bonnie and Shanks' potential upbringing is that when Oda had to gender bend the supernova in an SBS, the male Bonnie version actually looked like Shanks. So I thought that was really fascinating, and that's why like you'll probably see theories around like the block that say that, Bonnie is maybe a Figarland as well. And if that's the case, then the Figarlands have a nasty habit.
Oh, okay, that's interesting. I had never seen that before, but I'm glad that you.
Yeah, are you looking at it right now?
Yeah, it does look like Shanks, which is interesting.
Yeah, it's like a pink-haired Shanks with a hat and a piercing.
Yeah, so I'm glad that you also brought that up because, like you said, it was shown that this is a thing with the Celestial Dragons. Like Bonnie, that's what she was. We don't know who her parents are yet. I think it's Roswald. Personally, I think that would be pretty cool if it is him.
No.
Not cool like, oh, awesome, but cool the way that...
You're going to be hooting and hollering, taking off your shirts, twirling it around, screaming from the top of your lungs. Woohoo!
No, like just the way that Oda set it up. Because in that sequence at Mary Joie, when Bonnie like sneaks in and trying to get to Kuma, like he's being ridden by Roswald. And she's talking about her father, quote unquote, in that sequence. And at that time, we didn't know that it was Kuma. We just knew that she was in that talking in that general direction. So I think it would have been a cool little double thing. Like, if she is referring to Kuma as her father, but her literal biological father is Roswald.
Right there.
Yeah.
You know, I just looked something up. I looked up Roswald because I wanted to see like what the One Piece wiki had on him. And apparently, according to the One Piece Vivre Card, Roswald's, this is off topic, but his favorite food is monkey brains, as confirmed by Oda, which is kind of wild. I don't know if monkey brains taste that good, but
yeah, it sounds like evil rich people food. And also, I'm sure there's some kind of like Luffy thing in there as well, maybe.
Yeah, like eat the D clan or something.
Oh yeah. The rest of them have monkey too. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, with Bonnie and her upbringing, I would like it if she was a Garland, or even just, you know, a member of the Holy Knights as well. Because I think eventually we need those guys fleshed out a little bit. And since they seem like the fighting force of the Celestial Dragons, and with Bonnie being such a prominent fighter herself, I think it would kind of fit well. But I do like the Figarland ties for her, and if she is one, then that could all just tie back to Shanks and his upbringing too, being a half D, half Celestial.
Oh yeah, and that goes back into Shanks possibly having a brother. So like maybe one brother came from like an actual suitable mother in the Celestial Dragon's eyes, and then I don't know, the other was through, you know, like we said, other means. We have no idea how, you know, who or how. We really don't know most, or I'll say we don't know a lot about the mothers in this series. Like, for example, who is Dragon's mom?
Yeah, who got with Garp, right? Yeah. And then who got with Dragon? And then even with Rug, with Roger, like we didn't see much of her. She just kind of popped in, popped out. That was it.
Popped in, popped out, had Ace in her womb for what? How long was
like
it?
2 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, she was pregnant for 2 years. Like the most insane One Piece feat we've seen thus far. Freaking sky splitting. Yeah, freaking splitting the sky. I mean, Rug was pregnant for 2 years. It just held it in.
And she was a D too.
Yeah, she was a D.
So it's like there are random D women out there. You know, Roger somehow found it, so it's possible, man. Garling had that D woman, and you know, bastard.
You know, I can't tell if it's just like unique in the image that you showed of Shanks as a kid, but you know, in the background you actually see like a Mihawk type cross in the background. You see like the red beads that maybe Ace had. There's like a purple gem as well that could be like significant or a sign of Luffy's devil fruit. So like I'm starting to look at this background. I'm like, dang, like I wonder what else is probably hidden here.
Yeah, those beads are also kind of reminding me of Ace.
Oh yeah, that's what I meant to say.
Yeah. No, I was looking at that too. That definitely is Yoru, or it's either Yoru or it's kind of like the empty throne. I don't know, but those beads, I mean, those things are there for a reason. I don't know if Oda just was like, let me just put these random things here. He doesn't do stuff like that.
It's just random things I just thought of.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't find these in a treasure chest, right? You don't open a treasure chest and see like,
ooh, beads.
What's supposed to be a purple necklace and red beads. The cross I can understand, you know, you could sell that for some money, some gold weight. But the beads, I don't know. That seems intentional.
Yeah, I agree. And then there's a mirror, whatever that could be.
Yeah, maybe the twin theory, mirror.
Ah, I like it. So we got the new One Piece Vivre cards, and they're pretty weird, because we're getting some possible information such as Queen being Frankie's biological father? And I know that sounds wild, fan-fiction-y, but it might be true. Another really weird thing is that Higurashi Kurozumi, who is like Orochi's great aunt or something, the original user of the Bon Clay face swap Mane Mane no Mi fruit, she might be Yamato's mom, meaning that Kaido did, you know, with her. And there's a whole bunch of other stuff we have to go over too. But I want to start with the most interesting first. And there's like a few other things we have to go over, of course, too. And let me first explain what these Vivre cards are in case you're unfamiliar. So they're basically like these like informational trading cards, I guess, where you like buy packs of them and then you get, like I said, these information cards on characters in the series telling you things that you probably otherwise wouldn't know even reading the manga. And that being said, let's start with Buggy's Vivre card. because it says that the Cross Guild was initially meant to have more members. The author is still considering expanding the group, and early sketches even showed Perona as part of the Cross Guild. So that's really exciting because we've actually talked about this before. I think it was like last year. I made a video talking about the full potential of the Cross Guild because currently it's Buggy, Crocodile, and Mihawk. And I think by the end, or by the time they're complete, it's going to be Buggy, Crocodile, Mihawk, Doflamingo, and Moria. And I think that for a few reasons. And that's because I think that this team was foreshadowed by Oda in Chapter 0 of One Piece. Chapter 0 is like this supplementary manga that came with the Strong World movie. And yes, it's canon, of course. And it takes place like 20 years ago where we see Roger's execution in Logetown, and we see spectators of that, which we haven't seen before. And the 5 spectators that we're seeing in this sequence are the individuals that I just mentioned. And I don't think it's a coincidence that they're all lined up here. I think it's because they're all going to join the Cross Guild. And also the fact that they all eventually become warlords, and it seems like the Cross Guild is going to be comprised of the former warlords. Now, I don't know if Hancock and Kuma are going to join them as well, but if I had to put money on it, I would bet that Doflamingo and Moria are for sure going to join the Cross Guild, especially because it's saying here, early sketches even showed Perona as part of the Cross Guild. Obviously, Perona is like Moria's second-in-command / girlfriend. I don't know what their relationship is, but you know what I mean. And you can't have one without the other. Even though Mihawk did, but that was just kind of like time skip stuff. So I think this all but confirms that, and I'm very excited to see that play out because everybody loves Doffy. One of the best villains in the series, maybe the best. So to see him come back with the Cross Guild, who aren't like a full-blown villain faction, they're kind of like tweeners, in my opinion. They're somewhere between despicable and benevolent, if that makes sense. But anyway, on to the next Vivre card, and I guess we can go into the Queen being Franky's father stuff. So, Queen's Vivre card confirms that Queen had a son 36 years ago and abandoned him after 10 years. And this fits Franky because he was abandoned when he was 10 years old and he is currently 36. Now, is that a coincidence? I don't know. Like I always say, I wouldn't put it past Oda to do nuanced stuff like this because that's what he's all about. And also the whole thing about Franky's real name, like, isn't Franky. It's Cuddy Flam. And like Iceberg told him to just like drop that name and go by Franky. But it'd be pretty interesting if that's like the name Queen gave him for some reason, and maybe that's like Queen's last name, Flam. Because I'm pretty sure we don't know what Queen's name is, he just has the title Queen, which I assume was given to him by Kaido. Because, you know, like his whole main team was analogous to a playing card deck. You know, his main 3, King, Queen, Jack, and then he had the numbers 1 through 10. Even down to Doffy being the Joker. Also, Queen was on Vegapunk's team. And, you know, Franky's all about Vegapunk, even though they didn't really do much in the Egghead arc. But there's another parallel there. I'm not against this. It's just strange. And also, I'm talking like it's like fully confirmed at this point. It's not, but man, it really seems likely. Now, on to the next weird parentage stuff going on in these Vivre cards, because the other one that we talked about was Higurashi Kurozumi possibly being Yamato's mom. Because first of all, we don't know who Yamato's mom is. I thought it was like Big Mom, you know, because that totally makes sense that she hooked up with Kaido once or a dozen times, who knows? But if it's not Big Mom, then it could be Higurashi here. Again, Higurashi related to Orochi. I don't know her exact relation to him. She supported his grandfather, so maybe she's like his brother or one of his maidens or something that got his last name possibly. I don't know. She's like his great aunt, maybe. I don't know. But anyway, it says that Kaido arrived to Wano like 28 years ago and conspired with Higurashi. And Yamato is 28 years old. And also Higurashi has like white hair that kind of becomes green at the end of it, similar to Yamato's. Yamato's like green that goes into blue, but still, it is weird. And then you're thinking immediately like, wait, why would Kaido, get together with her? I mean, look at her. She looks like she's wearing a Halloween mask, and I agree. But we also have to remember, she was the original user, or at least that we know of the Mane Mane no Mi, Bon Clay's fruit where he can change faces. We've seen her do it, and we've even seen her show a face that is implied to be like maybe a younger version of her or just a beautiful version of her. So it's possible that she just face swapped to a beautiful version of herself or a beautiful woman, and then Kaido was like, all right, bet, that's all I need. And yeah, did the deed and got his heir. I don't know, but that would be pretty funny if that is the case. And now the other Vivre cards that we got were Mihawk and Shanks. Now, I don't want to get your hopes up on these. We're not getting like crazy information here. We're just getting, standard stuff, but there might be a little fun theory that we can go through with the information we're getting here. But anyway, with Mihawk, it says that his name is Dracula Mihawk, which we know. His affiliated ship is the Big Top Blaster, which is like the name of Buggy's like big ship that he has. So I guess it's just saying like, yeah, he's affiliated with the Cross Guild. Birthday, March 9th, height 198 centimeters, which is like almost 6'5". He likes red wine. He dislikes nabe, which is like Japanese hot pot dish kind of. His hobbies include laid-back farm work, collecting wines. His animal image is the hawk, and his epithet is Hawkeye's Marine Hunter and the world's strongest Marine. Now for Shanks, it says that his epithet is red-haired Shanks, as we knew. His titles include one of the Yonko, the former apprentice in the Roger Pirates. His affiliated ship is the Red Force. Is that the name of his ship? Did we ever know that before? Probably. I just forgot. Because like when you think of Shanks' ship, the first thing that comes to my mind isn't Red Force, but I guess that's it. His birthday is March 9th. His height is 199 centimeters. His flower image is the Hototo Gisu. And if he wasn't a pirate, he would be a landscape cameraman? Oda, what are you talking about? Anyway, the interesting thing here is that both he and Mihawk have the same birthday. And they're 1 centimeter apart from having the exact same height. What does that mean? I don't know. Are they brothers? I doubt it. But it could mean something else, especially since they're rivals and they're friendly with each other. There is some kind of connection between these two. My deep cut theory is that they were Holy Knights originally, or trained by the Holy Knights. And if not Shanks, then definitely Mihawk. It's possible Shanks, after he left Roger, after Roger died, we don't know what he did. I guess he just went on to become, captain of the Red Hair Pirates. But Mihawk, we don't know anything about his history. I mean, we recently just found out that he was called the Marine Hunter once. Now again, I'm going back to Oda not doing things without purpose. And Shanks and Mihawk having the same birthday might mean something. I just don't know what it is. So the new One Piece chapter is pretty wild because Saturn of the Gorosei is being straight up killed off here, and he's being replaced by Figureland Garling, aka Shanks's dad. Yes, pretty wild development. So let's break down how this happened. So we see the Navy about to leave Egghead, and Saturn is talking to the 9 vice admirals there. And he's like, we've obtained the things we needed. We got York, we got Punk Records, we got the power plant. With these things we can make the Mother Flame. So everything's fine for now. And then the vice admirals are like, oh, sorry, Saturn. We failed. We let Luffy and Bonnie escape. We'll go right after them to Elbaf right now. And Saturn's like, nah, it's fine. Just leave Elbaf alone for now. Which is pretty interesting, but also lines up with the incompetence of the Gorosei, especially Saturn, who seems to be the most incompetent of them. But there also is probably like a strategic reason to not go after Elbaf, similar to why they weren't going after Wano. But he's like, however, Vegapunk's broadcast getting out was a huge failure. And then the Vice Admiral Doberman there, he's like, speaking of that, Saint Saturn, if you consider Vegapunk's broadcast getting out to be a failure, then does that mean that it was the truth? Which is like a fair question, of course. And Saturn just looks at him and pops him in the head with his devil fruit ? Ability. You know that thing where he like stares at you and shoots you in the head? It's kind of like the thing that he did in his debut when he first transformed. He also did it to Sanji, but he does it hardcore to Doberman here, you know, for speaking out, saying that Vegapunk's message could have even been true, which obviously it is. And I thought that this would have just straight up killed Doberman, but no, he's kind of just getting hit and knocked out, I guess, because the other vice admirals are like, go wake up the medical team, Vice Admiral, sir. So I'm assuming that Doberman's going to survive this, and it's like, why does he need to survive this? It's like, just have Saturn kill him. Who cares about this character? But that's kind of like Saturn's last despicable act, because we're cutting away from that sequence and we're going to the Room of Authority in Mary Joie, like where the Gorosei hang out. And suddenly, Figureland Garling walks into the room and he's dressed like a Gorosei. And the Gorosei are looking at him and they're like, what are you doing, Garling? Because while Garling is the leader of the Holy Knights, he is still like an underling to the Gorosei, because the Gorosei are referred to as the highest authority in the world. So naturally, even somebody like Garling has to be subservient to them. So they're confused by this. And he's like, just now, I was given an order to come. And they're like, whoa, Garling, chill out, bro. Where's your manners? He doesn't even respond to that. He's just like, the Vegapunk York will from here on out report directly to me, because now I'm the new warrior god of science and defense. And of course, that was Saturn's title in the Gorosei, because we know the Gorosei are all referred to as like the warrior god of whatever. But now that Garling has this title, York will work under him along with the Seraphims, who York controls, and also, you know, the Gorosei do as well. And the Seraphims are in fact being recovered in the beginning of this chapter, so they do have them now. And then the other Gorosei are like confused, they're like, wait, what? Couldn't be. And going further, Garling's like, the state of the world is in shambles, and it's probably going to experience a lot of unprecedented amount of turmoil. So let's make the world a better place together, my fellow elders. And he sits down and he crosses his right leg over his knee, just like how Akainu sat down back in the Marineford arc, which is interesting. However, Akainu had like his foot pointed downwards, as to where Garling has his foot pointed upwards. And knowing Oda, it's not just a coincidence, he's trying to tell us something here. And it goes back to what I've been saying for a while now, and it's that these are the real evil bad guys, and they are 100% on board with whatever's going on with the Celestial Dragons and Imu, as to where Akainu and the rest of the admirals, and pretty much by proxy the rest of the Navy, are kind of like literally fighting for what they believe is right, and that once they figure out what's going on with Imu and everything, they will turn for sure. As to where Garling won't, because he is just full-blown Celestial Dragon psychopath. After this, we see Saturn back at Egghead drop to his knees, and suddenly these black flames and smoke are coming from him, and he's like choking. And then he just starts like getting wrinkly and aging faster, and like more and more smoke and flames are coming from him, and all the Vice Admirals are like, oh my god, what's going on? And then Saturn hears Imu talking to him through telepathy, like how the Gorosei were communicating with each other. And Imu's like, Saturn, why didn't you let Joy Boy escape? And Saturn says, please, take mercy on me, to think that he would have such an elusive power. And then just boom, there's an explosion, and Saturn is just reduced to a skeleton, and he drops to the ground, and that's it. He's dead. This is like one of the most concrete deaths I think we've ever seen in One Piece. And I'm surprised by this, to be honest. I didn't think that Saturn would die until the end, because I thought all the Gorosei were going to be like some of the final opponents of the Straw Hats, but this is exciting, and it makes sense because Garling is awesome, despite us not knowing much about him and only seeing him in like 2 or 3 chapters. I'm going to assume that he is now probably the strongest Gorosei member, because we have seen the Gorosei fight in Egghead along with their transformations, and while they're pretty strong, they weren't blowing me away with their displays of strength like the way that Kaido was in Wano, for example. And considering that Garling was like the leader of the Holy Knights and implied to be Shanks' father, he's probably unbelievably powerful. He might be the strongest character that the world government has next to Imu at this point. And speaking of that, now that he is a Gorosei, I assume that Imu is going to give him the same type of powers that they gave to the rest of the Gorosei, because as we've seen, the way that Imu killed Saturn means that the powers that Saturn has was obviously given by Imu, like the immortality, the telepathy, the regeneration, the summoning portals, and possibly even his devil fruit or yokai transformation. Now, how does Imu know how to do all that stuff? It still remains to be seen. It either has to do with Imu's devil fruit or whatever yokai thing that they have, or whatever kind of alien haki that they have possibly, or some kind of ancient level of power that we're just not familiar with yet. Kind of like magic that's adjacent to haki or something. But like I said, it seems like they're just going to give this to Garling as well. I don't know if Garling is going to get a transformation. I don't know if Garling already has a devil fruit, but at the minimum, I'm assuming he's going to have the telepathy, the teleporting, and the regeneration. So once again, I'm with my boy Sai, and we're going to be talking about Imu, but this time it's really warranted because we finally got to see what Imu looks like and sounds like in the anime. You know, recently in that episode where he kills, or she kills Cobra. So now that we have all this information, I kind of want to go over all the stuff that we've talked about with Imu so far, because, you know, there's plenty of videos that we've made talking about Imu. This is going to be another one. But like I said, we can go over what we've talked about before and how it might be true now. So the first thing is Imu's voice. I don't want to influence your decision, but what do you think about Imu's voice?
Yeah, Imu's voice, man. I love the robotic sound of it. You can't really distinguish the gender, right? Like, it's a weird mix of like, oh, you could see a guy, you could see a girl. Personally, I would even be happy if this is their real voice. Like, even if we get the unsilhouetted version of Imu, I'd be cool if this is just what they sound like in general. But base level, though, it's very robotic, which I think makes sense, too, considering the fact that during the Void Century, we learned that the Ancient Kingdom had technology better than Egghead. So it's like, oh, like, maybe they had voice changers back then. Maybe Imu has, I don't know, some mechanical implants, you know? I think that'd be pretty cool. It doesn't explain their figure, though, because they still are shaped really weirdly, but yeah, the voice is pretty sick.
I agree. It would be cool if that's just their voice, and that's what they always sound like. I don't know if that's going to be the case. I mean, if they're, like, in their Zoan form, then yeah, sure, but base form, maybe, maybe not. But I'm inclined to think that Imu is a woman now. I mean, we've always been talking about that, at least that I have. But the voice, I think, sealed the deal. And it almost makes me think that that's why they made Imu's voice distorted like that. Because it just straight up sounds like a woman. So they're trying to, like, not, you know. I mean, of course, that might not be the case, but I think it is.
We've also talked about a lot of theories about Imu being Lily even, right? Like, oh, maybe Imu has a Lily's body or something of the sort. And the thing with Imu's voice, like, there's so many things you could draw from it. And another thing it reminds me of, outside of it being robotic, is that this sounds like somebody being possessed. So maybe if that's the case with Imu, maybe Imu is a woman, maybe it's a Lily. You know, maybe Imu's soul is possessing Lily. There's so many ways you could spin this. And it's kind of crazy because in the latest episode of One Piece, which obviously the anime isn't, like, quote, canon necessarily, but we got more shots of their flower room, and the flowers you see in the room, it's confirmed not to be lilies, which is actually that was a big theory back in the day. Like, oh, what flowers does Imu have, right?
They're chrysanthemums, or however you say it, right?
Yeah,
chrysanthemums.
Like it's hard to tell because it's like black and white, and you know the shots are very saturated. They could be that. It could be even tulips. But lilies is definitely out of the question at this point. Now that we have like more shots of the room. Unless the anime just flubs it, right? There's also that possibility.
So, speaking of Imu in the flower room, the size of Imu. I mean, I know it was always there, but it was made more apparent now, I think. It's very small, right?
Yeah. Emu is very, very dainty. I feel like if you saw an emu across the street, you'd probably like pick on him. You'd probably push him down the stairs or something. Yeah, emu's really small, but when they transform, they're big. They were like the biggest monster transformation out of the Gorosei.
Yeah, we could get into that now, but I just want to say that we're describing the traits of a woman here. But anyway, so yeah, you are right. Emu's transformation is huge. But not only is it huge, now it seems even bigger than what is even implied in the anime, given how big the Gorosei were in their transformed states at Egghead, right?
Oh yeah, like dude, the Gorosei were bigger than Emmet. Like in that one double spread, like dude, Emmet was like a little kid in comparison to all the Gorosei jumping off the coast of Egghead. So yeah, like Emu is a massive thing, and they we didn't really get this context that well in the manga, but in the anime they showed that, one scene, Emu's like, climbing down the stairs, you see the hands, and then the next minute when they're chasing Sabo and Cobra, they're like bouncing up and down like Pac-Man. And it's like, yo, like where did the hands go? Where are the feet, Like what is this thing?
Yeah, so the anime did it very well. Great sequence, I gotta put that out there. And still don't know if that solidifies that it's a dragon, because in the last Emu video we talked about, possibly being like a Western style dragon. When Emu does eat the fire, it still holds up. I would say it looks even more dragon-esque in the anime sequence than it does in the manga panel. But the other directions and angles that we see of it makes it look just, like an ambiguous monster. Also with its tail. It could be the dragon tail, or it could be like a devil tail, or I don't know, some kind of unique creature. But Oda doesn't really do, unique stuff like that. That's not really a knock on him. He's very, adaptive, So given that the Gorosei are all known yokais, I assume Emu will follow suit with that to some extent.
Yeah, Oda is the type of guy that he would watch like a movie or read an article or see a cool story, and then he'd twist it and bring it into One Piece. I mean, that's true for everything we've seen, right? Even Gear 5th. Oda said the main inspiration was Tom and Jerry. I am leaning towards the cartoon devil aspect of Emu more now that we have that anime episode where they're bouncing up and down, because it does remind me of Luffy when he's fighting Rob Lucci. Luffy bounces into the ground, then he jumps up and it's just a giant head trying to chomp him down. That's kind of what that scene reminded me of, watching Emu chase Sabo and Cobra. And it's like, out of Oda's interview talking about Tom and Jerry, he said the hard part about drawing Luffy's Gear 5th fights is that Luffy is the only one doing shenanigans. He said the reason why Tom and Jerry works is because you have two of them, and they can both do the same thing. So it's like, if Emu is a cartoon devil, if Emu has, abilities like Luffy, but just darker, then I think that could fit really well. And that could be I wouldn't say one of the greatest fights in anime, but it would be one of the most unique fights.
I mean, it would be fun for sure, Toon Force people going at it in a world where only they have that ability. Yeah, that would be really interesting. But to play devil's advocate to Emu appearing to be cartoony and devilish in this episode, while they do for sure. And I was thinking that at first when I saw it. I was like, that's really weird the way that Emu looks. And then I was thinking, am I reading too much into it? And then I was looking at the Gorosei. And the Gorosei are similar kind of to Emu in this sequence, in the way that they're depicted. And I, comparing what the Gorosei's silhouette looks like in this episode to what they actually look like in the manga, and it's like, if we do that for Emu, then things are going to be drastically different,
Oh, 100%. Dude, all of the Gorosei looked so goofy in that episode, and even in the manga they did too, right? But the thing with the manga, at least, is that we could kind of pick out what they were. There was nobody out there who got 5 for 5, but I saw some people get the Itsumare one, which is pretty cool. But yeah, Bakotsu, he just looked goofy. Jupiter the giant worm, he looked really goofy. And that's kind of how it is. And it makes me wonder, since Sabo was in that room, obviously he saw what they are. I wonder if we'll ever get a scene where when Sabo meets Luffy or meets Bonnie or somebody else, he's like, hey, by the way, Emu looks like this. He could probably draw it out, right? He could draw word for word and description for description what Emu looks like. And that's the craziest part. They're silhouetted to us, but Sabo saw them.
So to reverse devil advocate, back to it supporting the devil theory.
Yeah.
Sabo says, in this sequence, oh, I didn't know I was in hell. I'm paraphrasing, but he says something like that. So maybe he said that for a reason. Oh, Emu's the freaking devil.
Yeah, he looks up there and he just sees a devil on a throne, which is very, very typical, right?
Yeah.
When you think of all depictions of the devil, he's always sitting on his throne.
So today we're going to be talking about the possibility of Garling's mythical Zoan devil fruit, or transformation, or whatever. And I got my boy Sai with me. We're going to be reacting to one of Writing Panini's Twitter threads. Always interesting stuff from this guy. And today, like you said, it's Garling's possible mythical Zoan or Emu influence transformation ? And it could be that he's some variation of a werewolf.
Hey, so if you know me, I am a big perpetuator of the Garling werewolf theory. I've made 3 videos about this so far. I don't know. Just ever since I saw his hair, I was like, yo, that's done, right? We saw the Gorosei transform. I looked at Garling and I said, yeah, this guy's a werewolf, right? Because the moon, right? Like the haircut just sells it all for me. You know, the haircut between the moon being a crescent moon to being a star when he's facing forward, to his name even. Like, there's so many plays that Oda could go here. Just tying this guy into being a werewolf, Fenrir, because people like that with the Norse mythology. He could even be like a lycanthrope. Like, there's so many different mythological wolves that Oda could pull from, and it would fit perfectly. Like, between, like, the meaning, right? So when it comes to werewolves and lycanthropes, the first werewolf that was ever created, it was back in, like, I think Greek mythology. And in that Greek mythology, it was Jupiter that transformed him. And I was like, yo, like, people have been pointing out that Garling and Jupiter just don't seem to get along specifically, which is kind of weird, right? Like, when Garling joins the Gorosei, like, Jupiter has that giant panel where he's like, wait, what? You know, like, you get that exclamation mark. It's like, wait, like, if he's a werewolf, guys, like, this could explain, like, the history, right? Obviously, Oda would spin it, but, like, there could be something there.
So, Fenrir is the one that we're going to go into now. Did you go into that in your videos at all?
Yeah. I mean, Fenrir, werewolves, they're so tied together. With the Fenrir connection, right? A lot of people look at Shanks, and they say that Shanks he's like Tyr, right? The red hair, missing an arm, like, he has all of that going for him. But another thing with Tyr is that he is also tied specifically to Fenrir. So that is why I like this theory a lot. And that's why, yes, Garling being Fenrir, it's perfect.
All right, so we have Fenrir in Norse mythology, who is like a big supernatural wolf, essentially. But is Fenrir also like a werewolf too, or is it just like a wolf?
Fenrir is more of just a wolf.
So it's equivalent to the moon, I suppose, you know, because I guess that's where the whole werewolf transformation came from. And Garling, we already established, is the freaking moon. And apparently Fenrir had 2 sons, Hati and Skoll. And what's really interesting about that is that Skoll chases the sun and Hati, or Haiti, however you say that, chases the moon. And that's really interesting to me because of the whole theory that, first of all, Shanks is the son of Garling, but also Shanks has a twin who is like at the top of the Holy Knights at this point. And if that all connects, that's fascinating because we saw, you know, Shanks went with Roger, D, the sun, and then, of course, the opposite end, Emu and the Holy Knights and the Celestial Dragons are the moon, which would be Shanks' brother.
Oh, yeah. That would fit perfectly. And the thing with Shanks as well, right? Having Shanks be the son of Fenrir in a way, having him be tied to wolves, is that connection he has with Mihawk, who's like, you know, vampiric. So it's like, you know, it's also a play on like werewolves and vampires.
Wow.
Which is why I've always been a big fan of like this theory specifically.
Wow.
I'm
that adds a
glad
whole
like,
nother
you know,
layer.
this is becoming more popular. This makes my heart warm a little bit, you know. It's like Christmas Eve. Yeah, I came home. There's like milk and cookies there.
Oh man, this is like eggnog for me.
Yeah, eggnog, milk and cookies, just a fruit cake even.
So another thing that makes me think that this is plausible is because it is Norse mythology. It's not like just some random thing. Because, you know, Oda's going into Elbaf now. And we've already seen he's adapting Norse mythology into it. Yggdrasil, Loki, all that stuff. So why not have this as an aspect of it? And for some reason, Shanks is like boys with everyone on Elbaf. They love him.
Yep. Dude, ever since day 1, Shanks has been tied to Elbaf. The minute we saw his ship, right? People saw his ship all the way back at the beginning of One Piece. They're like, yo, that's a Norse ship. What's going on here? And then you learn about the giants and how they're Vikings, and it's like, oh, dude, it's done. Like, this is a theory that's, well, not Garling specifically, but Shanks being tied to Norse mythology. That's been a theory since, like, chapter, like, 2.
Oh.
And then we get to chapter 100 and we meet the giants and it's like, holy crap, yeah, it's happening. And then we see Shanks' home base is Elbaf, or, you know, Shanks hangs out here. And it's like, yeah, it's set in stone. It's all there.
So another little interesting thing here that Writing Panini points out is that Saturn, like the actual planet, has a moon or like a satellite planet around it called Fenrir.
Yes. One of Saturn's moons is named Fenrir. So it could be like symbolic of, like Saturn's gone, boom, you replace it with Garling's moon, Fenrir. And if I recall correctly, like even the constellation, like the name of these planets that Fenrir is classified as, it sounds like Garling. I believe it's like Gaelic. I could be getting that wrong. But it's something that starts with a G, where like I've seen somebody like twist, logic and pronunciations a little bit. And they're like, oh my God, it's Garling. It's like, okay, it's a little bit of a stretch, but it's not bad. I'll take it.
Yeah. I mean, I'll take it too. You know me. But this also makes me think that there's a possibility, and I hope that it doesn't happen. But since Garling is replacing Saturn, there's a chance that he would just get, Saturn's form.
No!
I know, right? I know that doesn't sound good.
Gross.
Because it brings up the question of like, how does that work in the first place? Did Imu give this transformation along with the other devil magic, or is it like a fruit? And if it is one or the other, then does Imu just have these at the ready? Option 3 is that Garling was always Fenrir.
I am going to go with a mixture of Imu giving them the powers and Garling always being Fenrir. I'm somewhere in the middle when it comes to that. Like, I feel like all of the Holy Knights alongside the Gorosei, like, they have that transformation, and it's connected to Imu directly, right? We've seen Imu assassinate Saturn from, like, miles away, and he's able to talk to him, and it's like, okay, like, there's gotta be a reason why, like, Imu can just take away those powers immediately. So I think it is tied to Imu, and I think it might even be tied to, I kind of feel like it might be like a baptism in a way. Right, like maybe the minute you become a Holy Knight or the minute you become a Gorosei member, they're like, hey, like here's Imu's, like in JJK they have what is it, like the bath? I think it might be like that. Like they just go in and then it just releases your inner demon or whatever that looks like, which sounds insane, but I mean, all the other options are insane too, right? I don't think the Devil Fruit route's gonna be where Oda's going here, simply because of just how the Celestial Dragons view Devil Fruits. Like that's something the common man eats, Why would they name it devil fruits if they're gods? Like, why would they eat it? I mean, so I do feel like this is a different transformation. And I feel like if Shanks stayed with the Celestial Dragons, he would have a transformation too. I don't think he has one now because he left, but I could see his brother having one and they could be like making fun of him saying, hey, like you talentless freak, I bet you can't transform like us.
Yeah, I'm still on the fence about whether the Holy Knights have fruits or not, but this makes me think that I guess it's a possibility if Garling always had that fruit to begin with. So I'm fully convinced that Mihawk was a former Holy Knight.
So Mihawk, I completely agree. I don't know, like, so Mihawk has a lot of Holy Knight tendencies. It seems like he might know more than he lets on. But as far as the Mihawk Holy Knight connection goes, I think it's definitely there. For me, it's really just a matter of when did he leave the Holy Knights, right? Because we have a picture of when Mihawk was a kid, and he looked really scruffy. He didn't look like nobility. He didn't look like a celestial dragon. So it makes me wonder if he got kicked out early on, or maybe if he had family who are Holy Knight members even. But yeah, I overall, though, I do like this theory.
So it's just interesting that Mihawk at this point in the story is one of the oldest characters, not like, chronologically, but existing within the series. We've seen him for like over 25 years at this point, yet we know nothing about him. Nothing.
Literally nothing. Zero. Bupkis.
So he has to be a Holy Knight at this point, because why else would he be the world's strongest swordsman? Despite us knowing nothing about him, everyone just accepts that. No one ever challenges that. When Mihawk comes up, no one's ever like, I don't know about that. He's pretty good, but I think I'm the strongest. Never hear that. Everyone's just like, yep, he's unanimous, #1 pound for pound. And it's like, why?
It definitely has to do with his blade, to be fair. Like, it's not just, maybe he's strong, maybe he's not strong. But when you look at that black blade, and then you look at your blade, it's like, okay, he's definitely on a different level. If my sword just looks normal and his is black, then yeah, I don't even want to challenge him. I think it kind of makes sense. And plus, these characters, we don't know if Mihawk has Conqueror's Haki or not yet, but if it's anything like Shanks, where Shanks just oozes that Conqueror's Haki, it's like, yeah, like you could probably walk up to Mihawk and you're like, okay, I don't want to mess with this guy. Like, he's just looking at me funny. He has the crazy double pupils going on, or double irises. And yeah, I could see why people wouldn't want to fight him right away.
The double irises. Originally, he was Hawkeye Mihawk. They don't really call him that anymore, but you know, I think if you follow the channel by now, you know what I think about Mihawk's eyes. So I won't go into it in this one because this is more so about him being a holy knight. But you brought up Shanks. That is also one of the cruxes of this video because the big theory, which is essentially confirmed, but we're just waiting for official confirmation, is that Shanks' father is the leader of the Holy Knights, now a full-blown Gorosei member, Figureland Garling. So check this picture out. I don't know if you've seen this before, but let me know what you think about it.
Oh, I saw that, the pose, yeah. I was wondering what picture you had ready to go. But yeah, I saw this before. People are like, yo, Mihawk and Figureland Garling, they sit the exact same way. They got the legs crossed and everything. I mean, it's not even just like a regular sit either, like a regular pose. They're posed up like nobility, bro.
Yeah, it is not a regular sit. Now,
It's $1 million sit.
Here's another odd little parallel between Garling and Mihawk. You know of this one, but I just think it's interesting.
Yeah, it's the rabbit line, right? Mihawk says the rabbit line, and then boom, we go to God Valley, and he's like, hey, you know, like it's the rabbit hunting tournament. There's also one more line. It depends on which translation you're reading, but during Marineford, Mihawk actually calls some of the pirates that challenge him, the no-name pirates, he calls them insects as well, which falls in line with how the Gorosei typically speak too.
And then another little odd connection to royalty here. Mihawk's Yoru aesthetically looks similar to the Empty Throne, along with like that jacket that Mihawk wears. And then, you know, ultimately it comes down to Mihawk and Emu have the same eyes, just red and orange. Me personally, putting up all of this stuff on a backboard and connecting it with string, it makes sense to me that he is a holy knight, and probably, I mean, I guess he has to be a celestial dragon by default, but yeah, he was a former holy knight. He has to be. There's no other explanation for it. If he just turns out to be nothing, that's going to be disappointing. But anyway, we're talking about Figureland, Garling, and Shanks. So, in theory, if Mihawk was a holy knight, and, you know, probably a really top one. I mean, he wasn't the leader, but he was probably, like, the best of them. If he is now regarded as the world's strongest swordsman, not being one, being a holy knight. If he was with them, then in theory he would be training with the theorized Shanks' brother. We've got like theories within theories here. So let me also go into that real quick for anyone who's uninitiated with that theory. So we talked about Garling being Shanks' father. Well, it also turns out that he might also have another son who I guess looks exactly like Shanks, possibly, but it's the silhouetted guy that we see.
Everybody's on the hunt for the One Piece, and then you see that crazy silhouette that literally looks like Shanks, but it's not Shanks because he's in that page as well.
Exactly. So in theory, this guy is Shanks' brother, and I'm thinking that Mihawk trained with Shanks' brother when they were both holy knights, and then once Mihawk was exiled from the holy knights, he eventually met up with Shanks. It was like, oh, hey, I know your brother, let's be rivals?
See, for me, what kind of flubs it is the timeline. So I agree. I do think Mihawk is a celestial dragon, but I don't think he had much experience in the Holy Knights. I personally think that he was a bastard child and maybe got kicked out very early on, and that's why he tends to not like a lot of the things that celestial dragons do. If we take that rabbit line verbatim, right? He's kind of like the antithesis of the rabbit hunting tournament. So I do think that Mihawk has that royal lineage to him, but maybe, just like Shanks, he was abandoned very early on. Like how Shanks was found in a treasure chest at God's Valley. I feel like Mihawk might be the same way. But even still, I do agree that I think Mihawk has that information. I think he knows about Shanks' dad. And maybe that's why they bonded, right? They're both celestial dragons, and they're like, hey, you know, I don't like you. I don't like your dad. I don't like your siblings. I want to fight you, man. And plus, Shanks is a really strong swordsman, if not better than Mihawk, right? People have that argument. I'm not really here to give my opinion on that, but, you know, like, I feel like there's a lot of reasons why him and Shanks could just bond. Like, they have that shared childhood, in a sense.
So we talked about this in one of our previous collabs. It was about actually Shanks and his brother, and it was that Shanks is possibly a bastard. So, do you think Mihawk, in theory, could be like a celestial dragon bastard as well?
Yeah, I would say so. Because for Shanks, right, we don't know the circumstances as to why he was in the treasure chest. I think it was maybe a mistake, an accident. I think Shanks might be a pureblood. But for Mihawk, like, we saw images of him as a kid. And like I said, he looked poor, he looked dirty. So it looked like they did intentionally get rid of him. Unless we come to find out there's another treasure chest scenario where Mihawk was in it. That would be kind of insane. So yeah, I think they simply just shipped him off. They didn't like him. They didn't want to see him anymore. And that's all they wrote. But of course, you mentioned it, like the eyes, right? Mihawk has the same eyes as Emu. And it's like, wait, like, that seems special. That seems like a certain bloodline. And I'm not trying to say that Mihawk is Emu's son, because I think that'd be nuts. But, like, there's something there that nobody else has, right? It's Mihawk, it's Caribou, and Emu. Like, there's nothing, there's nothing on God's green earth that could possibly connect these people.
Hakuba.
And Hakuba's another one, yeah. Hakuba.
He has the orange ones.
And then I would argue, we don't really know too much about this new character, but Loki, his eyes are also covered. And it's like, what is going on? Like,
yeah,
does Loki have these eyes too?
Yeah, and he has the tongue out like Doflamingo, who also has covered eyes. Yeah, I mean, I think that the ringed eyes, like Emu and Mihawk, mean immortality. The perpetual youth surgery was performed on them, but it's like, if that is true, then it's like, when did it happen? Who did it to Mihawk? Why did they do it? Too many questions. But I guess we can leave it there. What we ultimately agree on is that, at minimum, Mihawk is probably a celestial dragon.
He's got royal blood, for sure.
Yeah. Either trained by the Holy Knights, but if he wasn't, then I guess he just grinded by himself, and he just used his lineage's potential to its maximum, like Shanks did.
Yeah, that could be it. I could see him just doing that. He maxed out all of his stats, and now he's just chilling. Which could also be another reason why the world government offered him a position in the Shichibukai system as well. You know, we already know Mihawk. We've heard about him. Sure, let's just make him a warlord. Of course, he's also super powerful, so that helps. But I could see how he might have pulled some strings. And there's also the Doflamingo connection. Apparently, Doflamingo and Mihawk, they're very cordial with each other as well. And Doflamingo is not like that to anybody else in the Shichibukai.
Yeah, I'm sold. I'm sold, especially because, you know, Doffy is a celestial dragon in the Warlords as well, so I'm sold on it. But I do think that he was a Holy Knight, but it's okay to agree to disagree. But
yeah, we're on the same wavelength at least, you know.
Yeah.
I'm right there with you.
So we got the new SBS for Volume 110. The SBS is Oda's Q&A section that he likes to include in the volumes. And this time we got the answer to a pretty substantial question, and that is, who gave Luffy the food in Chapter 1103? So let me just get you up to speed on what's going on here. So back in Egghead, before Saturn had shown up, Luffy was fighting against Kizaru while in Gear 5. And at the end of their initial scuffle, I guess you could say, Luffy hits Kizaru with the Star Gun and pretty much TKOs him. However, in the process, Luffy gasses out, you know, from having to exert himself so much using Gear 5 against Kizaru. So he's in that, like, old, exhausted state until he can get more food or recover properly in some other way. And at that point, Saturn had just shown up on Egghead, and all chaos was breaking loose. So there wasn't really like an easy way to get Luffy food at that point. And on top of everything else, Saturn had Bonnie and was about to kill her. And then as that's happening, suddenly food magically appears in front of Luffy, and he just consumes all of it. Funny enough, though, it's not even Luffy who winds up saving Bonnie in this sequence. It's actually Pseudo Kuma who helps her out because, you know, it's like her dad, and it went into the theme of what was going on at the time. But Luffy does come back and wreck both Saturn and Kizaru. But anyway, it had the community questioning, like, who gave Luffy the food? Now, at the time, I thought it was Kizaru because it made sense that he did it. He was the only one who really could have at that time, other than Caribou randomly using his swamp Logia to transport Luffy food, but that just didn't seem as likely. But that brings us to the question that Oda was asked here, which was in chapter 1103, Luffy was so hungry and cannot move, but in chapter 1106, he became full. Who was it that gave Luffy food? And Oda said, in chapter 1103, Luffy started to wolf down food. When Luffy said food, who was it that responded? Was it Sanji or Frankie who was present near him? Kizaru and Sentomaru were also there. Whoever did it never got exposed, it seems. That action seemed to be done in the speed of light, that even the naked eye can't see it. I don't know who did it. The speed of light. So, yeah, obviously Oda is telling us that it was Kizaru who did it, since he has the light Logia and can allegedly move at the speed of light. I'm not going to go into if he does or doesn't, or why he only does that sometimes and why he doesn't do it all the time. It doesn't really matter. However, it was Kizaru who helped Luffy here, moving allegedly at the speed of light so fast that Saturn couldn't even see him, because Saturn was like, who gave him food? So I think this is great. And let me also explain why Kizaru even gave Luffy the food in the first place, and it's because he wanted him to save Bonnie. I guess Kizaru kind of sees Bonnie as like his niece, because of their time spent together with Kuma and Vegapunk and Sentomaru. And throughout this arc, we've seen Kizaru being conflicted. His whole thing was being a cog in the machine of justice, kind of just going along with it, keeping his mouth closed, just following orders. But now that his closest friends are brought into the picture here, and he's tasked with killing all of them in this arc, and he actually even successfully winds up killing Vegapunk himself, or leads to his death. I guess it was Saturn who killed him, but he still stabbed him. And I guess one of his initial breaking points was when he saw Bonnie about to be killed by Saturn. He was like, well, I can't save her myself because then Saturn's gonna see what I've done. And I can't kill Saturn because he's a freaking immortal Gorosei guy. So my best course of action here is to give food to Luffy, who I know is stronger than me. He'll recover and then save Bonnie. And I could do it fast enough without anybody realizing it was me. So that, in combination with Kizaru's big crash out at the end of the arc, where he like scream cries at Akainu for what he had to do at Egghead, this all leads to, what we've been talking about for a while now, Kizaru's big face turn. But not only him, but I think all of the original 3 admirals will all have face turns. So next up, we have some more surprising info, and that's the backstory of the 2 new admirals, Fujitora and Green Bull. So a reader asked, please tell us the former occupations of Fujitora and Ryokuyu before they became Marine admirals. And Oda said, all right. Just as they became the ones in charge for the defense of affiliated nations to the world government through the system called the World Military Draft. These 2 were handpicked by the Marines. Ryokuyu Aramaki hails from the South Blue. He was a police officer from the Taya Kingdom and caused a great incident involving a woman and got thrown into prison. His reputation of possessing extraordinary strength reached the government. He got drafted into the Marines and immediately got a special promotion to Admiral. Oh, all right, not what I expected, but to be honest, considering that the world was already established so much by the time these guys got introduced, it kind of had to be weird and ambiguous like this, because there would be no other excuse to introduce individuals that are as strong as admirals that no one ever knew about before, you know what I mean? Because it says that Green Bull was known for his strength. So he was just some like admiral level guy chilling out in the Taya Kingdom in the South Blue, and he had the Forest Logia? All right, I guess that's just how it works. I mean, he's not young either, but there has to just be some kind of backstory for these guys, I guess. Also, whatever the incident was with a woman, I think you kind of know he probably did something, pretty bad, like assault. Fujitora Isho hails from the West Blue. He incurred losses on a gambling house in Twin Snake Island, and the place he was working as a bodyguard was bought by the world government with a large sum of money. Isho was a former defense military chief in the Aoi Kingdom that once existed in the Grand Line. The Aoi Kingdom was destroyed because of the war, and he became a significant war criminal. The world government will eventually be made aware of this fact. Whoa! They don't even know this yet? And what war? I mean, we know about the Void Century War, but this was only like, what, 30 years ago or something. I don't know. And then the Blue Kingdom, the Aoi Kingdom, it once existed in the Grand Line. Wow, Fujitora has a really interesting backstory, way more interesting than Green Bull, but I always thought that Fujitora came from Wano. And it seems like he does. So Oda is saying that he hails from the West Blue, but maybe that means he wasn't born there. It could be very similar to Koshiro Shimotsuki, you know, Zoro's master, how like his family migrated from Wano to the East Blue. So I'm assuming something happened like this with Fujitora. It has to be that way. But this also explains why he's so like righteous, you know, and wants to do the right thing and try to make the world government better and less corrupt. But now let's go into the rest of the questions that we got here, or at least what we got translations for. So Oda was also asked, I really love the sword members, so I want to know their age and profile. Does Drake belong to the same class years as Kujaku and Prince? And Oda said, it's difficult to point out what exactly you want to know about their profile, but I can give you their ages and heights. For more detailed information, it's written on the Vivre Card, One Piece Visual Dictionary. I won't say something mean as, I want you to buy those, so I won't write it here on the SBS, but physically speaking, the information written there is much better. Don't get me wrong, since you've asked for it, I will answer. Here you go. Drake is 33, and he's 233 centimeters tall. That is 7'6", which is pretty tall, but this is One Piece. So he's probably just average height, I guess. Kobe is 18, and he is 176 centimeters tall, which is 5'4". There you go. That's more relatable for you guys. Rear Admiral Kujaku is 26, and she is 5'9". Hibari is 17, and she is 5'4" as well. Just a little bit shorter than Kobe. Just a tiny bit. Prince Gruz is 29. I thought he'd be younger than that. And he is 6'7". And then Helmeppo is 22, and he is 5'8". And then Oda also said, although Kujaku and Gruz are a junior of Drake, their relationship is already like the same class. Also, I've been asked many times if Gruz is a prince from what country, but actually he wasn't. He's just a rich person. Another question Oda was asked was about the Gorosei clothes. So he said, the suits that the 5 elders are always wearing, are they high-branded designer clothes? Is there a shop in Marijuana that specifically caters to them? Please tell us about the clothes designer too. And Oda said, his name is Niorno Armani, a play on Giorgio Armani, a designer clothes specialist who hails from the Nagagutsu Kingdom in East Blue. Only the 5 elders are allowed to wear his special clothes. Okay. Oda clearly having some fun here. I guess this is technically canon now, but I guarantee he made this up on the spot. And then to finish off this video, Oda was asked how Luffy's clothes change when he becomes gigantic. And Oda said, okay, listen here. If Luffy's clothes get ripped off when he becomes gigantic, his thing is gonna come out. And yes, he actually said the word. Oda doesn't have to deal with, YouTube monetization. That is why Luffy's clothes don't rip when he becomes giant, because things would start flopping. So Oda just randomly answered 10 fan questions, and it's really exciting. It's actually better than the SBS that we got earlier this week, because we're finding out what Akainu's bounty is and what happened at the Rocky Port incident. I know, I can't believe it. So let's just get right into it. So Oda was asked, please tell us how the bounty system of the Cross Guild works. And he said, famous Marines are a special case. 1 star equals 100 million berries. 1 crown equals 10 stars, or 1 billion berries. Company officers and below are 100,000 berries. Field officers, command rank and below, are 1 million berries. Captain and Commodore are 1 star, which is 100 million berries. Rear Admiral, 3 stars, 300 million. And then the Vice Admiral is 5 stars, 500 million, which is interesting. Admiral, 3 crowns, which is 3 billion berries. We found this out before. And then Fleet Admiral, 5 crowns, which is 5 billion berries. We did not know this. So this means essentially that Akainu's bounty is 5 freaking billion. So is that accurate to like how strong he is? I don't know, because there's only been 2 characters that have had a 5 billion berry bounty. and that is Whitebeard and Roger. Whitebeard was 5.046 billion, and Roger was 5.564 billion. The closest to them before that was Kaido with 4.6 billion. So let me just say that I do think Aki Inu is really strong. I mean, obviously he's one of the strongest characters currently in the series for sure. However, if we say that he is like accurately a 5 billion bounty in power, then that would mean that like he's 2 billion stronger than Luffy? And I know it angers some people when we try to say like the bounties are the accurate power levels of characters and whatnot. And I'm not saying that it 100% is, but more or less this is what the bounties represent, right? Like a rough estimation of how powerful someone is. And I don't think Aki Inu is roughly around 2 billion stronger than Luffy. Now, if we're taking significance into account, then yeah, 5 billion, especially according to how the Cross Guild works. Aki Inu, a fleet admiral, would be worth that much to them for sure. So I don't think it's necessarily like 1-to-1 how it works with the world government's bounties, but more or less it's, I don't know, kind of towing the same line. Basically what I'm trying to say is, I wouldn't take away from this that Aki Inu is like as strong as Roger or Whitebeard was in their prime, and that he could just mop the floor with everyone in the verse right now outside of like Emu. I don't think that's the case, although I do think that Aki Inu is top 5 strongest right now, probably, right? Next, Oda was asked about what happened at the Rocky Port incident and how Kobe became a hero. So we've heard about this a few times in the series, but we never found out like what actually happened. So here it is. Oda said, since explaining it would take too long and I don't think this will be depicted in the main story, but here's a summary of the Rocky Port incident. Hearing that the pirate island holds an important poneglyph, Law hijacked a massive passenger ship called the Rocky Port and infiltrated the island. This ship happened to be carrying the king, an important nobleman of a certain country. However, the ship Law wanted to board was actually a smuggling vessel, flying the same nation's flag and involved in dealings with Pirate Island, which led to major trouble. Law clashed with the pirates, and soon after, Kobe and Blackbeard separately arrived on the island for their own reasons, leading the three to join forces. As a result of this incident, Blackbeard became the king of Pirate Island, Law was recognized as one of the 7 warlords of the sea, and Kobe was hailed as a hero. Wow. It's a shame that Oda off-screened this, because this is really cool. Dare I say it, it's cooler than a lot of the stuff that we actually do get on screen. I'm not trying to hate on Oda or One Piece, but you guys know what I'm saying. There's a lot of stuff that could have been chopped out of Egghead, and then we could have gotten like a flashback of this instead for sure, right? But it's fine. I'm not going to try to speculate too much about what this important poneglyph is because there's so many of them, and what they say could be anything about the Void Century or what leads to that information. Pretty sure they're not talking about a road poneglyph here. This is probably like an informational one rather than like the directional one. And we don't even really know why Blackbeard and Kobe were going there. It's kind of just a coincidence. And then once Law, Kobe, and Blackbeard all saw each other, they were like, oh, well, we all kind of know each other. I mean, I don't know how much they know Kobe, but Law and Blackbeard definitely know each other. And they were like, well, hey, let's just team up here because, you know, we're fighting against all of the pirates on Hachinosu. Because we found out that Ochoku, who I'm pretty sure we don't even know who he looks like, or Wang Shi is also his name, who is a former member of the Rocks Pirates, was there, and he was defeated. Blackbeard said that he needed help from Kobe to defeat him, so I don't know how much help he needed, but yeah, I guess he was a big deal, and that's what led to them all getting their promotions and all of the hype that they got out of this. Also, Law had like that case full of hearts that he had, right, out of that Rocky Port incident, so man, I wish we could have seen this. But anyway, Oda was also asked, during the God Valley incident, St. Garling went and confronted the pirates, but how strong is his combat abilities? Oda said, he's strong. There's a reason for his strength. All right, thanks, Oda. No, it's fine. I mean, yeah, we know he's strong. I'm sure he was just as strong as Roger and Garp and Whitebeard were. Like, he was in that tier. But as for Oda saying there's a reason for his strength, I guess something special happened to him. Like, I don't think this just means he trained really hard. There might be something that we maybe not necessarily can guess right now, you know? Maybe it could be something similar to the Gorosei. Maybe he was given his power. Or he's like somebody's son or something. Maybe he's one of the Gorosei's son. No, I don't know. I don't want to speculate too much, but there's a reason for his strength. But anyway, going further, another question was, when Luffy is using Gear 5, he pulls out things like goggles and baseball helmets from what looks like a Hagoromo or a feathered raiment. Please tell us how it works. And Oda said, it's the entrance to Nika's fantasy. Okay, I guess you could take this for what you will. It's up to, I guess this is up to like personal interpretation. I don't know if this means that the Sun God Nika Devil Fruit gives Luffy literal power of imagination, like he's Gremmy from Bleach or something, where he could just manifest whatever he wants. That's a little too broken, but it is possible that that might be the true power of the Nika fruit. And maybe even Emu has something similar to that, like the yin to Luffy's yang, maybe. I don't know. Let me know in the comments what you think of this. Sabo inherited the Mera no Mi, the flame fruit. He's demonstrating its powers to the fullest. Did he do some training to properly use the Mera no Mi? And Oda said he is training every day. I think that Sabo, who regained his memory, remembered a lot of things. Yeah, I'm sure he did, Oda. Has Dragon ever lived together with Luffy? No, at least not in what Luffy remembers. He is different with Kuma because he is the leader of the Revolutionary Army, and if their parentage relationship is revealed, it'll endanger Luffy's life. I wonder what kind of feeling he felt when he is forced to leave his family, and what did he thought when he saw his son in Logtown? Well, Oda, why don't you tell us? Because you're literally the only person who knows the answers to those questions that you yourself are asking. The ship of Blackbeard pirates is named Saber of Zebek. Does it have any relation to Rock's D Zebek? Zebek is the name of a sailing ship. So it could be a coincidence, or maybe not. Actually, I'm not too mad at Oda's answer here because, as we've been speculating about for years now, Blackbeard probably does have some kind of connection to rocks. But Zebek is the name of a sailing ship. So that would be hilarious if Oda's just like, yeah, it was just a coincidence. Blackbeard just, named it Zebek because of that. I don't think that's the case. I'm sure some way, whether biologically or through will, Blackbeard is related to rocks. The Kamusari Divine Departure attack that took out Kid in one hit. Was that move taught by Roger, or did Shanks learn it by imitating him? He remembered it because he was always looking up to Roger. It's not just something that anyone from the Roger Pirates can imitate, so Shanks' talent is quite astounding. That's a great question. I love the Kamusari, probably my favorite attack in the series. And I always wondered, if Shanks did train with Roger or Roger taught him it, but no, he kind of just learned it from muscle memory and watching him. And it's understandable because Shanks is a freak. I'm sure he could just, learn how to do a Conqueror Hockey energy blade. As the 10th ship captain of the Blackbeard Pirates, what kind of work does Kuzan do? Does he have subordinates? He has subordinates. He's not the type to obey everything Blackbeard says. For Kuzan, being part of a pirate crew doesn't necessarily mean he must do evil deeds. Rather, it implies living freely. However, as a member of the Blackbeard Pirates, it seems he has also caused many casualties. Okay, so I like this too. I like the little line about living freely. Obviously, that parallels to Luffy's whole thing, and actually what the Straw Hats call Luffy when he becomes in his Nika form. They call him his living freely or living the most free when he becomes the most free. So that's not a coincidence. And also, I guess this is confirming that Kuzan has either directly or indirectly led to the death of many innocents. What kind of system is the World Military Draft that added Fujitora and Ryokuyu to the Marines forces? Countries affiliated with the world government have their own soldiers for protection through the World Military Draft. The Marines strengthened their military by drafting the most capable soldiers from these ranks. This draft also became a trigger for the recent 8-Nation Revolution, as the weakening of national defense forces may have contributed to the revolution's success. Okay, that makes a lot of sense actually. And this ties into the SBS that we were talking about earlier this week, where it revealed where Fujitora and Ryokuyu came from. And long story short, they were just randomly admiral level dudes just chilling in the East Blue or South Blue, wherever they came from, I forget. But this is saying that them getting removed from those, little places, being big fish in small ponds, led to the collapse of those nations, which, yeah, totally understandable. So in the latest chapter of One Piece, we were introduced to Loki of Elbaf, who is technically the prince right now. I mean, I guess he still is, but he looks awesome. He's huge, and he is heavily implied to be extremely powerful. But how powerful exactly? Well, we're going to be talking about that in this video with my boy, Sai. So Sai, let's just get right into it. How strong do you think Loki is?
He is as strong as all of the giants on Elbaf combined, apparently, which is nuts. Considering that Dorian Broggie, I'm not trying to bounty scale, but they are worth 1.8 billion each. So Loki is all of them combined together, essentially. It's nuts.
So it was revealed in this chapter as well that Dorian Broggie's new bounties are 1.8 billion. That puts them at like 11th or 12th highest bounty in the series. So when that was first revealed, I was like, that's cool, I guess. I mean, maybe this is Oda trying to explain why they were doing so well against the Gorosei. But then I was also thinking, like, well, we don't really get too many bounty reveals like this on characters that aren't the Straw Hats, And I was like, wait, are they going to, like, join the Straw Hats or something? I was like, no, it can't beat that. And then we saw Loki and how he was getting hyped up. And I was like, oh, wait, is this why they revealed these bounties here, to give us more of a grasp of how strong Loki could be? Like, do you think that's one of the sole reasons for that?
I think it's a partial reason, for sure. I mean, when it comes to Loki, and even just the giants in general, we don't know too much about how strong the other giants are, right? We know Dora and Broggie are monsters. Oimo and Kashi are kind of there. Harden. I'm still kind of iffy on Harden. But just saying that line, that all the giants came together to stop Loki, and even then, it was maybe not enough. It's that is insane. And plus, he has a legendary devil fruit on top of it all, right? The only other giant we've met thus far that has a devil fruit is San Juan Wolf, and he's a part of Blackbeard's crew. So I do put a lot of stocks into Loki, and not to mention Luffy, right? If we're saying that the giants, they're not reliable, Luffy, dude, he was in the Lego castle, the Lego kingdom, and he said he could hear the roar of this guy all the way back then. It's like, what? Really? That's some crazy hype.
Yeah, citing Luffy as if he was Goku. This is like a Goku moment. When he senses a strong guy, he's like, oh, and then he goes off happily to confront them. So I don't think Luffy would get excited for somebody like this that isn't straight up Yonko level. What do you... What do you think about that statement?
The dreaded Y word, huh? Yonko level. Do I put him on the scale of the Yonko? I'm gonna say yes. And hey, it's because the lowest bar we have is Big Mom. And Big Mom wanted to ally with the Giants. Big Mom wanted Lola to marry Loki. I think that in and of itself is enough hype to say, yeah, I think Loki is definitely Yonko level. If you want to argue and say he's at the bottom tier, that's fine. But I do think he's in that realm, right? He got acknowledged by Luffy. He got acknowledged by all the giants. I think he's there. And how strong do you think Loki is? You asked me the why question, but what about you?
So I think in order to make things interesting, he has to be as strong as Kaido, which is insane, right? But it's just that the power creep in the series has gotten to the point of where you have to just keep introducing Kaidos, or you're just kind of regressing the stakes, at least in my opinion. I'm not saying every single person has to be that strong, but I'm saying if they're going to be a big threat to the overall arc, where only Luffy level guys can deal with this person, then obviously they have to be a Kaido or something. Or be some kind of Lex Luthor type individual that has a Kaido equivalent level of power, but Oda doesn't really do that, so you know what I mean. I don't know if that's hyperbole, but the whole thing about all of the giants having to come together to restrain Loki after he killed his father and took his devil fruit, the former king of Elbaf. If that's every single freaking giant, thousands, I don't know how many there are. There's got to be a couple thousand maybe. All had to come together to restrain him. Oh my god. I mean, I guess you could say if Garp, went berserk, it would take all of the Marines to restrain him. I would believe it.
Yeah, I mean, at the very least, Loki is more powerful than King Harold because he murdered him. He just got done off screen, And, going off of your comment about needing more Kaidos, I agree with that because if we don't have more Kaidos in the series, or Lex Luthors, as you put it, then Luffy won't grow, right? Luffy, he needs to fight a wall. He needs to fight someone who is stronger than he is to learn a new ability. Against Kaido, Luffy awakened, he learned Ryuo, he got advanced Conqueror's Haki. You need these strong opponents to push Luffy to greater heights. It's like Goku. I don't know why we keep on bringing up Goku. I brought it up the other day to like a regular conversation, but yeah, it's like Goku. Like if Goku doesn't fight Frieza, he doesn't go Super Saiyan. That's just how it is. Luffy needs to fight somebody stronger so that he can master his Sun God Nika fruit, whatever that looks like.
You know what? That might be where things are headed, because Loki does claim the title of Sun God for himself. So maybe he's like, oh, you think you're the Sun God? You're not even properly utilizing your freaking fruit. And then maybe that's how Luffy gets stronger, possibly. Speaking of fruits, though, what do you think his fruit is? Loki's legendary fruit that he got from his father.
So I feel like, I don't have a concrete answer, but I do feel like whatever Loki has, it is something that is eerily similar to Luffy's devil fruit. Whether it's a Gomu Gomu no Mi knockoff, whether it's another god type devil fruit, I feel like he has something that would make us think, holy crap, this guy's the sun god. Like, it's got to have fire, it's got to be stretchy. I think he has that for sure. Because unlike Road, who was a complete loser, who was like a knockoff, you know, Timu sun god, I feel like Loki's actually being serious here. I would take him pretty seriously when he says that. Like, he truly does believe he has the Sun God Nika fruit. And also, another thing to back that up is that the Giants of Elbaf have been passing down this legendary fruit for generations. What would it be other than something that is top tier, or something that is related to Sun God Nika? You know, because Sun God Nika stems from an Elbaf legend. So it only makes sense if it is tied to Nika somehow, some way.
You know, I didn't even think about that. I did, you know, of course, consider that it could be a mythical Zhoniin, but I didn't think that it would be sun god related, because, you know, Luffy has the sun god Nika fruit, so it's like, what would Loki have? Is there like another sun god Zhoniin fruit?
There isn't. There really isn't. And that's why it's hard to determine what Loki would be, right? Like, there can't be two of the same devil fruit. And I feel like that would get a little bit redundant if it's exactly the same. So it's honestly hard to tell. But unlike the sun god we met 3 or 4 chapters ago, I don't think he's BSing, though. I think he's being serious when he calls himself the sun god.
Oh, yeah. I speculated that he thinks that he is the sun god the way that, you know, someone would think they're Joy Boy. Like, he believes that he's the Messiah because of, yeah, like, whatever version of the Joy Boy religion that was taught to the Giants involves Sun God more than anything. And I guess it's all going to coincide. Like, I think, you know, Kaido, Loki, Luffy, they're all, even Blackbeard, they're all kind of doing the same thing in their own way, you know, which is ultimately, like, trying to overthrow the system, I guess.
Yeah, I could totally see that. He just wants to take that title to become the king of Elbaf.
And, you know, when he says end everything, I guess that's supposed to coincide with Ragnarok.
Oh, yeah, 100%. And it's interesting because I was looking at what Ragnarok entails and what leads up to it, and there's a lot of... It's very specific. I didn't realize how specific Norse mythology was in certain instances, but there's a lot of prerequisites that we've actually seen in the series. Like the Red Line, they had waters rising, earthquakes, which could be related to Blackbeard. There's also like the Winter Solstice Festival, which is something the Giants celebrate. There's even a thing where a fire giant apparently breaks a bridge. And I was like, wait a minute, the fire giant? What about Loki the sun god? Like, so many things actually line up with Elbaf so far that it does feel like Oda's leaning heavily into Norse mythology here. So I would imagine that Ragnarok will happen in the near future. Or at least the One Piece version of it, right?
Yeah. And that will probably lead us into, like, the final war. Whatever, you know, that is. Laugh Tale War, Marriage War, whatever it is. Ragnarok will be the catalyst for that. But yeah, that's pretty much it for this one, guys. Once again, thank you, Sai, for coming along, talking about One Piece stuff.
Always, brother. Thanks for having me, man.
Of course, subscribe to him, like the video.
Subscribe to Zhoniin.
Nope.